Hey everybody, if you haven't been following my channel, a couple days ago I posted a video in which I argued that atheism has an issue accounting for rationality, or that atheism struggles to furnish a conceptual framework for rationality. And since then, me and DannyPhilTalk is an atheist slash agnostic on TikTok, me and him have been having some back and forth, posting videos, and last night I actually went on to one of his lives and we talked for about 3.5 hours or so, specifically about my argument, and so that is what is going to be in this video. I just want to say this up front. I'm going to leave timestamps in the description to different sections of our conversation, because in the beginning we spend a couple times just kind of a couple minutes kind of just talking about, you know, how do we define God, and then we kind of talk about some generic things about what Danny's view of the mind is. We kind of talk about that, but it's not until a little bit later in the conversation that we actually start talking about kind of the meat of what my original video. And so I wanted to put that in the description, so that if you don't want to listen to all the kind of preliminary remarks, or we're just kind of understanding each other's philosophy of mind and stuff like that, you can just jump to the section that is of the most interest to you. So I'll put that in the description. Make sure to check that out. Big shout out. I want to say thank you to Danny for, one, having me on his live, two, being respectful towards me, and three, thank you so much again for getting me this audio and the video. We had some technical issues that Danny was really good about persevering through, and I was so delighted we were able to get this video up. So please enjoy, and yeah.
Hey Garb,
Hey man, what's up? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for
What are
coming
you
on.
what are you debating tonight? Let me turn my video on real quick. What are you debating tonight? That's not what I expected to hear when I hopped in.
So actually, you can weigh on this. It's pretty difficult to define what God means generically. Because you want to say that Zeus is God, but then there's like because in Western philosophy, especially in philosophy religion, God is construed in terms of like a perfect being with omni properties plus. And if you define that God that way, then what are the Greeks and the Egyptians are saying when they say Horus is a god? Oppie writes on this. His definition of God is, so first of all, he distinguishes between God and little g God. They're not the same. He thinks you can only have one big G God, and you have multiple little g gods. And I think I take his view. His definition of big G God is a being that has power over all of nature and any other supernatural entity or phenomena, right? So there couldn't be two of them, because then you couldn't have, one would have power of the other, and then that would form a contradiction, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah. I
Well,
don't
I
want
was
to
gonna
talk
say,
too much.
no, that's okay. That's interesting, because this is actually a topic that I have to kind of dance around with talking with Christians, because I would say, as long as I was given the chance to quantify this, I would say that technically I think the proper view of a Christian is that there are multiple gods. But I'm using gods in a really loose sense, like how ancient Hebrew authors would use it. I don't know how much you know about like divine council. So long story short, the word that's used for God in the Old Testament, like in Hebrew, it's Elohim. And there are times where Elohim is used as a proper name to refer to Yahweh. Like they do that. But Elohim also has a just much broader, it has a much more broader use. It can mean that it can be used to refer to just kind of what you would call little g gods. It can be used to recall what Christians would normally like to call demons. It can be used to refer to dead humans, actually. There's an instance in the Bible in which a dead human soul is referred to as an Elohim. And so several Old Testament scholars say, like, listen, Elohim is a term of residence. That it's a term that applies to, it describes the area that being is in. So an Elohim is a being that exists in the spiritual realm. Like, that's a much broader sense.
So it's not like a name, right? It's not like a name that picks out only one particular thing. It's like more of a like an office or title or category. Is that kind of?
Yeah, so with Elohim, it does sometimes function as a proper name for Yahweh. Like, so there are times, like, that's one of the uses. But, so for instance, I mean, So this is funny because, I beef with Dan McClellan a lot, and sometimes Christians tag me on things where he says, that the Bible isn't monotheistic, and like we would probably disagree, him and I, on how we cash that out. But I actually kind of agree if we define our terms right, because Yahweh says in the Old Testament that He's going to bring judgment on the gods of Egypt. He says that Psalm 82 says God takes His seat in the midst of the gods, and so it does have this. But the idea in the Old Testament is that Yahweh is distinct from, He is the Most High. So that's one of the epithets that's attributed to Yahweh the most, is he's the God Most High, and that's why the Most High is attributed to Him as an epithet, is it's distinguishing Him from the other gods. And there are various things saying He created the other gods, He's exalted. He is the Lord of hosts. In fact, Lord of hosts is one of the most common epithets, and that's why it's this idea of He's the Lord of everybody else. Mm-hmm. But over time, as you mentioned, in philosophy in general, God came to be associated, like that term came to be associated with the omni properties. And then, so as that time goes on, it's like, so yeah, it's like, if by God you mean, these omni properties, this package of properties. Well, like, no, I don't think the Christian scripture articulates there being a whole bunch of those guys. But if we take God, or the term Elohim, how it was used in that time, it gets down to semantics. And so that's why I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't really find terms like monotheism and polytheism to be that useful, because these are like way later. Like that's like within, I think it was 200 or 300 years ago was when those terms started being used. And it just seems really anachronistic to me to try to take those and weigh things from the past, like fit them into that system. And I feel that same way with Hinduism. Like I get kind of irritated at this point when I hear Christians say, "Oh, Hinduism's polytheistic." I'm like, well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to kind of end on that note, then we can move on to the argument that we've been discussing recently. I think with that guy, so he has what Oppie wants to say is that there are conceptions of God, just like there might be conceptions of Atlantis, right? People might think of Atlantis in the DC movie, or they might think of it as more like the Disney movie, right? And so he wants to say that perfect being theology is a particular conception of God, whereas the conception of God that, I don't know, the Hindus or the Greeks had are deviate, but it's not like they're losing track of, it's not like they're changing the subject. But nonetheless, like if you're ever interested, there's a book that he wrote called Describing Gods, and it's just the first chapter on the concept of God. So if you're doing that kind of work, but did you want to comment on any of that before we move on to the argument?
We can move on to what we've been
beefing over. Yeah, I do appreciate you coming on here. Now, for the context, Garb and I are mortal enemies, but
I'm going to let you describe the context while I grab some water real quick.
Okay, no problem. So we've been beefing over this argument, but we've decided to. I've invited him on my channel with the promise of a respectful, productive dialogue. So if you're hoping for fireworks or a coliseum, that is not my aim here. Garb and I have our differences. We criticized not only our arguments, but our characters. But we're going to set aside that. So we deliberately are setting that. I'm deliberately setting that aside as best as I can. So, because I value having the conversation than not having the conversation. So I hope he heard me during that. But yeah, so I'm not going to stress too much about the particulars of our exchanges, because like I said in my last response, it's kind of a blur. When you, maybe with you, this is the case with me, when you talk about this, then I start to lose track of what I said, what you said. But I do want to ask, so in your original argument, so what Plantinga really wants to talk about is naturalism, but am I misremembering what you said? Were you talking about naturalism, or were you talking about mind physicalism, or do you think that even matters?
Yeah, so I didn't mention physicalism specifically, I don't think. I think I said that your mind is reducible to your brain or contingent on it. And so I phrased it that way because I know, like the naturalist or the atheist, whoever, like you guys have options when it comes to your philosophy of mind. Like there are lots of different philosophies of mind that you can take. You have people who are hardcore reductionists. You have some atheists who are like, I would say, borderline property dualist. Functionalist, like whatever. And so I'm not gonna shoehorn you into any specific philosophy of mind. Do you have a philosophy of mind that you're drawn towards?
I'm some kind of dualist. I'm not so let me tell you one of the reasons why I was very sensitive to this topic. First of all, my viewers are going to be surprised to know that I don't accept natural selection. Okay, I don't accept any form of physicalism or naturalism. Okay, so and we're a minority in the atheist community. Given I think you pointed that out. Now, reductive physicalism is there's mind physicalism, and then there's reductive physicalism because you have non-reductive physicalisms. So I think that we're, maybe I think around 20-25% of physicalists are like identity theorists or some in which is very linked to the reductive kind of physicalism. Now that statistic I got from a friend of mine, I could not substantiate that percentage on field papers, but that's what they told me. That seems plausible. Identity theory kind of fell out of favor in favor of functionalism, so that tracks with my experience. And most dualists are theists, but there are a few dualists that are atheists, like me. I take from a lot of Akil Bilgrami's work, who's also an atheist at the Columbia University, but I am not a substance dualist. I don't believe in souls. I struggle to understand what a substance is and what a soul is. So my view of the mind is I want to distance myself from the Cartesian version of substance dualism. And I feel like property dualism is an okay label, but it's misleading. And we could talk about that another time. But that's so. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, yeah. So I mean. Yeah, I at this point, I mean, I know we have beef to talk about, but at that point, I'm actually really interested in just what your philosophy of mind is. I don't want to derail it or anything like that. So yeah, I'm not surprised then that like I'm not surprised then by your response then. So I can definitely see how you were like, okay, yeah, this doesn't apply to me. So yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
And I'm open-minded about it. If I have a lot of my friends, of course, are naturalists and think that are physicalists about the mind, and I could be convinced otherwise. It's not, I don't think that like identity theorists or functionalists are like stupid or that it's super incoherent. It's something that I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years, but here's why. There are two big reasons for why I'm a dualist. Number one, it's very hard to naturalize normativity. Okay, which has to do with like what you should or shouldn't do, oughts, good, bad, right, wrong. I think that stuff is impossible to naturalize. Now, again, I'm still thinking through a lot of this, but and I think that intentional states are normative states in themselves. So if normativity cannot be naturalized and intentional states are normative states, then the intentional states cannot be naturalized. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I think there's the project of science, and I think the project of science is to look at the world in a kind of a third-person point of view, right? So, example, like, this might be a horrible example, but I'm going to try. So, there is this pin, okay? The physical facts of these pins should be equally accessible to any kind of psychology, right? So, if an alien came by, they would in principle be able to discover that it's the molecular structure, the laws of physics and chemistry or whatever that governs those causal relations, blah, blah, blah. But it's going to be very difficult to know that it's meant for writing, okay? Those facts are not going to be discoverable in the pen. In fact, it might even be impossible to discover that it's a pen without appealing to another psychology, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that what the business of science is to look at the world that way, okay? Whereas the first-person point of view, so I call it the third-person point of view. The first-person point of view is to look at the world in a very different way. And I want to say that neither collapses into the other. So the idealist wants to say the third-person point of view, all the atoms and whatever the stuff collapses into the first-person point of view because everything is mind, and the mind is the first person. And then, so the idealist go in that direction. The naturalist or the physicalist goes in the opposite direction. That everything in the first person point of view can just be, or like atoms and does, it can be generalizable to the third person point of view. And so, as a dualist, I think that you can't. I think they're distinct. I think there's a sort of ontological separation such that you can't collapse one into the other. But again, very open-minded about that kind of thing.
Okay. How do you feel about the causal direction of the mind and the physical then? So I know, because you said you didn't want to go with substance dualist. Are you an epiphenomenalist? Do you think there's a...
I'm an interactionist. So I am an interactionist. So I think that if there is this distinction between the mind and the mental and the physical, they're going to be causal. They can causally interact with one another. Now, there's this famous problem called the interaction problem, and I wrote a little paper on it, an unpublished paper, just from my graduate work. And I think at best it raises questions, but none of it are philosophical defeaters to dualism.
I also wrote, when I did my grad program, I wrote a paper defending dualism against the interaction problem. I mean, I was coming at it from a substance dualist perspective, but yeah, I think I called it dualism bloody but unbowed, or something like that, playing off of how Alvin Plantinga did it. But yeah, I think the interaction problem is lame, and so and what's interesting is there are a lot of non-dualist atheist philosophers. I say a lot. There are some who have who said the same things. I think it was an entry. I might be getting this wrong, in the Black Bolt Companion to Substance Dualism, where a non-dualist has an entry specifically critiquing the interaction problem and responding to it and being like, this ain't it, boys.
Well, can I say one last thing about this, and then but there's another. So I sometimes I have doubts about dualism, but it's mostly because this distinction between physical and non-physical is actually much harder to pronounce. And in fact, it's gotten me so curious that I sometimes I'm skeptical about labeling myself as a dualist, because then I wonder, what is this exact difference between physical and non-physical? And but the reason why I'm fine with the label is because for every when the dichotomy ends up being pronounced, I always come on the other side that, well, no, I think then they're on non-physical things. So there are multiple ways of characterizing physical and non-physical, and for almost every way that I see characterized, I'm always not a physicalist. So, I mean, unless you define physicalism as like literally what can exist or what does exist, well then yeah, I'm a physicalist. I've had that, but those are really unsophisticated definitions of the physical. But if I'm to change my mind, I would probably change my mind in the direction that this dichotomy between physical and non-physical is not a substantive dichotomy.
No, I think that's a good remark to make, because I also think that, like, I feel this some way about sometimes with things like the natural, supernatural distinction. Like, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I don't know actually that, it's like, I'm not sure that there are these two different realms are quite as distinct as we think they are. I mean, I can't articulate I can't give you depth on that. It's just something in the back of my mind. I'm like, I think there's maybe a little bit more overlap here than we're used to. And I feel kind of the same way about, like, I mean, you could get weird and be like, okay, where it's like, is the mind some just weirdly different part of the physical world or something like that? I mean, that's something to leave open. So you're I like you a lot better now that I know that you're
that's so well, and it's even worse because I reject natural selection, right?
So tell me about your views of human origin then, because I'm interested in that.
Well, I'm fine with evolution, the narrative in evolutionary biology. I'm not fine with the mechanism, the touted mechanism of natural selection. Really, I don't think Darwin discovered any mechanism, right? And if he did discover something, it was some kind of trivialism, like, dead things stay dead or something like that. It wasn't. It was hardly a discovery. Now, I think evolutionary biologists can now. The argument that I think absolutely kills natural selection is Jerry Fodor's argument, who's an atheist, by the way, who's a naturalist, by the way. Jerry Fodor has this book called On What Darwin Got Wrong. And he, I think, gives... I'm more convinced that natural selection is fatally flawed than dualism, right? And the third part of that book is a damning conceptual critique that I don't think natural selection can ever recover. But we can talk about that if you want. But it's very, you would love it. My viewers would hate it.
I just want to say, like, when I was in undergrad, I mentioned to my philosophy professors, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of, like, philosophers who I disagree with some of their positions, but I still think they're really good philosophers. And they're like, what's an example? And my example was Fodor. I think he's a really good philosopher who does really great work, even though I disagree with, like, his theological position. So, yeah. Because, I agree. Like, that's one of those things where sometimes I might come out swinging against a neo-Darwinian synthesis just because that's what I know. Like, I know, like, okay, that's been critiqued a lot in evolutionary biology. And I know, like, in a sense, they've kind of moved on from that, like, this really simplistic thing. And so at that point, then, if you don't have to give me a precise mechanism, are there any, like, general thoughts that you have? Of, like,
so, look, this is how
I
I see evolutionary biology, right? I look at evolutionary biology much I look at history. So, like, this is not Fodor's argument, but it's to pump the intuition of where I'm coming from. All right, so it's not Fodor's argument. This is not my objection to natural selection, but it pumps the problem. Okay, so Revolutionary War. What happened? Why is it that the redcoats were being killed off faster than the revolutionaries? Right. Well, now notice that we can paint a narrative about camouflage, right? We could say, well, something about the environment is a lot of green and brown, but red sticks out, and so they were easier targets. And we can paint a whole narrative that makes sense to me, okay? Mm-hmm. But notice they do not appeal to a mechanism called warfare selection. They don't. Mm-hmm. There's no theory called warfare selection. There is no process by which historians about human conflict appeal to, called, like, soldier selection, right? It just doesn't, they don't need it. What happens is that there's a selection, selection process where these people die, those people live, and we paint specific narratives that are tailored to the situation. There's not an overarching theory of human history, right? As far as I know, there are no overarching mechanisms in human history. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we can give specific explanations for the kind of thing that we're asking about. That's how I look at evolutionary biology. If you look at any modern college textbook on evolutionary biology or biology textbook, they will say that there are overarching mechanisms in evolutionary biology. But I don't really attack. The one that I tend to attack the most, because there's a very strict conceptual flaw, is natural selection. But we could talk about that if you wanted. But that's where I'm coming from on. So why is it that we have 5 fingers rather than 6 fingers? Why do you have lighter skin than I do? That can be explained in a historical biological context. We can appeal to all sorts of biological postulates and mechanisms, but none of those mechanisms will be overarching. And if those mechanisms are in first, like supposed to be biological mechanisms, there could be physical mechanisms that are overarching. Physicists could produce those things. Maybe even chemists can. But I don't think they're going to be like, I guess like the release of insulin would classify as a mechanism, but not there are no such things in evolutionary biology.
Yeah. So I guess at this point, so since like the thing I had in mind with that video was, like kind of a generic evolutionary argument against naturalism. And at this point, I'm not going to be able to press that specific every aspect on that on you, because like that's not the philosophy of mind that you have, and you're kind of in this. It seems like you're in a place where you're still trying to think about how our cognitive faculties arose. So I say that to preface to say I'm just interested in kind of having like an exploratory conversation with you about some general thoughts I have, and because like I said, at this point, like my original argument, it's not going to be as applicable, but I still have some concerns about how any position. Let me say this, and then I'll get your thoughts about it. I have concerns about any position in which our cognitive faculties don't come about from some type of teleological purpose or some process which is favoring them being truth producing. I say that, and that's kind of a what you call like a sloppy way of putting it. Because I mean, technically, you could be an atheist and think our cognitive faculties come about in a truth favoring way through these processes, right? I left that door open. Or you could think they came about in a truth favoring way through God, or as you've mentioned, you could think they came about from a truth favoring way from aliens. So I left that in, and that's a really
I said
broad-
that. I said that. I didn't know I said that.
I thought that you mentioned the aliens things. If not,
That's my. I think if I said that, I stick by it. But I didn't know I said that. You see, that's just
okay,
forgot.
that's fine.
Okay,
I just use that as an example. Even if you didn't say that, you've got options
but
here.
that's something I would say. That's something I would say. So go ahead.
Yeah. So then I guess maybe I have just an in general concern with if my cognitive faculties came about through any process. If I believe that my cognitive faculties came about through any process other than something that's truth favoring, that just seems to me to present epistemic problems to me. How do you think that? Yeah, I'll just leave that open ended, and you can take that where you want.
Okay, so yeah, let me see if I can put this succinctly. So,
Well, can I give you an analogy real quick because maybe
Of
this will
course.
help. Like, this is gonna be a sloppy analogy. It's kind of off the cuff. It's like if I bought a Roomba to like clean my house or something. The purpose of the Roomba is to clean my floor. I wouldn't expect it to also like, in the process of what it's doing, accidentally spell out the a message of like war and peace or something like that. Or I wouldn't expect it to like spell out pie or something along those lines. I mean, it could. It seems like the probability of that happening, it seems low. That's just because it's not what it was designed to do. That's not the process that created it didn't favor it. And so I think the concern I have is that if my cognitive faculties didn't come about in such a way that favored truth conditions or favored truth, production, then it seems like I'm going to have a big epistemic problem on my hand.
yeah, so I'm gonna do a first. I'm gonna address everything, but I'm gonna do a philosophical low blow first. Okay.
Okay, go for it.
So, but first, as you being a theist, I'm wondering: does God have nothing produced God's cognitive faculties? God is just built in with cognitive faculties that He can trust, right? So I think that's in the background, and it's not necessarily. It's something that's lingering in the background. That if we're saying that a mind requires that there be some mechanism that brings about that favors truth for that being's respective cognitive faculties and sense perception and all that, then there's a question about how God looks like, right? Because He doesn't have an order.
Can we pump the brakes then? I think there would probably be a disanalogy there with God, because the reason this I think comes up as a problem with me is because I'm a finite creature. Like I think that I began to exist. Like something caused my cognitive faculties, and so then because something caused my cognitive faculties, well then I have to start kind of doing it. I have to start to do thinking. I was like, okay, what caused it? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's because I'm in this position as a creature, and I know that you're kind of working through your philosophy of mind right now, but correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like any position that you take, it's still going to be the case that in some way your mind, whatever it is that produced humanity, like whatever that mechanism was, and we can kind of leave that as like a Darwin's black box right now or whatever. What I mean? We can just say, okay, like there's this process that produced humanity. It is the result of that process that got our brains to how they are right now, and it is to some degree our minds and the way we think is dependent on our brains, and therefore the result of that process. So even if we keep it kind of vague, it still seems to me like there's going to be this lingering issue of like, okay, like that process still has some issues. Does that make sense?
Well, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
If you just popped into existence randomly, do you think that would give you a reason to think that your cognitive faculties aren't reliable?
If I popped into existence randomly.
No cause of your mind.
Yeah. So there are then. So I'm going to set aside, like, 'cause I have a lot of metaphysical issues with something popping into existence randomly. Are you suggesting uncaused?
Yeah.
I mean, if something like that happened, I don't know that I have an answer for that off the top of my head, because I think the antecedent isn't possible. So I mean, technically, you can evaluate conditional statements even in which the antecedent is not possible. Like Alvin Plantinga talks about this. Like you could say, um, if 3 was greater than 4, it'd still be the case that like 9 is prime or something like that. So you can kind of evaluate these type of these things, but like I'm not going to be able to give you an off the cuff remark just because I don't think the antecedent is possible. But I'm guessing that you have a dilemma in mind.
Well,
and so,
this is what I'm thinking, right? So the common denominator between God and and a mind popping into existence, they have no cause of their cognitive faculties and their faculties relate to sense perception, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was just wondering, because you don't think God is necessary, he has no cause, and yet he doesn't have this problem, right? And so I'm just wondering, because you appealed to the trait of being finite, right? So an uncaused mind is finite, but would it be in? You could look back and you could put, hey, Garb, did you know that while God made me, and with truth with truth in mind, right? But you popped into existence, you don't have that, so you can't trust anything that you believe or see. I'm wondering whether that would be a force.
Can I play with this idea then? So I think maybe one of the things that's bouncing around in my head here is that I'm like, okay, let's say Bob just pops into existence. So I think one thing I could say here is like Bob, let's say I say, okay, Bob, he doesn't have to doubt his cognitive faculties just because they're uncaused. Let's say I go down this line. I personally take the position of phenomenological conservatism, which I think I can take my experiences as being prima facie justified in the absence of a defeater. So one line that I think I could push back on and say, okay, listen, even if I grant you like, hey, uncaused minds don't have this problem, I would still be, or something along those lines, I'd still be the case. It was like, well, my argument is directed at people who have minds in which they believe they were caused and they were caused in a certain way. So
right.
Even if So I mean, personally, it's really hard for me to evaluate these, for me to give an answer on these statements about someone popping into existence uncaused, just because I don't think.
Well, that's fine. Remember, it was in the background, because what I'm wondering if there's a principle here that you must have a mechanism by which that cares about truth, that favors truth, to have trustworthy cognitive faculties, right? Right. And I don't think I'm then we got, but it seems like then that principle is not true. Yeah. Because you have the case of God, you have the case of I would say that that mind that popped into existence, I don't know if there's going to be a problem for him, but it seems like you don't hold to that principle.
Yeah, I think I can clarify this up though. So I'm not making a general statement about like minds and what caused their origin. I'm saying if one has a belief about their cognitive faculties originating in this way, then they have this issue. So it's like I was thinking about this earlier because I know Brendan made a response to me. And I was thinking about responding to him. Brendan, if you're in here, I'm just going to be honest. I might be lazy, and if you've seen this, I might just not respond to you because you're hearing all this. That's my lazy. I've had 3 other people tag me on this. So see something. So let's say I have Bob, and Bob thinks that his cognitive faculties were formed to exist. They were caused by a process. And let's just get really hyperbolic here. Let's say Bob believes they were formed by a process in which it's incredibly improbable that his cognitive faculties come about. I'm not saying that's your position. I'm just saying, let's say worst case scenario.
Right? To understand that, Bob, can you repeat that again?
Yeah. So Bob has a belief. So let's say I have Bob, and he has a belief about how his cognitive faculties were formed. And then I have Sam. And Sam has beliefs about how his cognitive faculties were formed. My argument has to do about that belief that you have. Let's say we grant that it's true. Let's say that we play pretend that belief that it's actually true. does granting the truth of that belief then kind of cut back in on itself? Does it kind of cause an entailment that comes to undercut itself? And so my argument is that I think that if you have a belief, like if I have the belief that I took a drug 10 minutes ago, I believe I took a drug 10 minutes ago that causes me to have extremely vivid hallucinations that I can't tell from reality. If I believe that, I have an active defeater for thinking all these other things that I'm thinking about right now. Like, oh, I think I'm talking to, you and so forth. If I don't have that belief, I don't think I have that problem. Like if I think like I haven't been drugged, I think I'm okay. And so this is, for me, this is a comparison. Does one hold a belief which entails that, big epistemic problem?
Right. Like I guess an example would be like if I know that there's an evil, like have you seen the show, what's it called, Legion?
Yeah, I love Legion.
That's actually So in the first season, spoilers, he has Farouk in his mind, and once he finds out that he has Farouk in his mind, first of all, he didn't really trust his cognitive faculties half the time, but that was mainly because there were unreliable predictions that were unreliable. He couldn't make firm predictions about what he was experiencing. Like, oh, if I go over there, will it still be there? Because of his, he's failed in the past. I think that plays into a lot of how I think about this stuff. But once you find out that Farouk is in your mind and that he's more powerful than you and he can cause hallucinations, then that will give you a reason to distrust your certain sensations and experiences, right? And so I'm with you there that if you have a belief where that there's some kind of mechanism or influence on your cognitive faculties that actually go in the negative direction, having a tendency towards false beliefs, then I think that serves as an undercutter. So now the question is, what about so we have two other options for people that one option that where it doesn't seem like there wouldn't be a problem. Like if you believe that the mechanism favors truth, then you don't have an option. But what about a mechanism that is neutral? I haven't really thought about that too much, but yeah, I'm agreeing with you. In other words, if you explicitly say, I believe in this mechanism, and this mechanism actually favors false beliefs, okay, then you have a reason to distrust your cognitive faculties. But I'm wondering if naturalists are committed to that.
Yeah. So that's why I put it in that really hyperbolic way, just to make a distinction. So it's not just any mind which wasn't caused in XYZ way. It was any mind which holds a belief that. And so, for instance, with God, like I don't think God's sitting there believing that he has faulty cognitive faculties or something like that. And so again, that I guess at that point, then it gets to the question is like, okay, is any naturalist or any atheist position, are they going to be in a situation in which there's this kind of negative entailment with how they view their and I want to say I think so. It seems like you can take the position that your cognitive faculties were formed in a way that favor truth, and you can affirm that. You can say, okay, listen, maybe there's maybe natural selection and neo-Darwinian synthesis, maybe that ain't it anymore, but maybe there's some other thing. Like you can leave that door open, and I won't press you for a mechanism there. But if you go that route, I have other concerns that I'll bring up. But then if you say, okay, my cognitive faculties weren't brought about from a way that favors truth, that's what I'm saying. If you have that belief, that just seems really problematic to me.
Okay, if they were brought about, because we're talking, because the more I think about it, the more relevant I think the God case is, because, and again, it's not, I'm not presenting this, it could be, we have to think about God's cognition. We would agree that perhaps God is justified in trusting his cognitive faculties, right?
Yes.
Now, why? Now, whatever the answer to that is, right? The point at the end of the day, he doesn't need to know anything about a mechanism. There doesn't need to be a mechanism that he has to know about, right? He just knows. And remember the belief that God is not himself in a brain in a vat, or right? These Cartesian skeptical scenarios don't apply to God either. So, but how does he know that, right? And so the point is that if there's an answer there, a potential answer there, then I'm wondering if that potential answer can be used by a finite being, right? And so
oh, sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I go ahead.
Yeah, so I have kind of several lines of thought here. One line of thought is that with God, if you say it's like, why is God justified? Well, then we get into these internal, external, internalism, externalism type debates.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm tempted to say something like God, God has perfect knowledge of himself and, all truths, things like that. But it seems to me like whether or not God has this problem seems secondary to me to whether or not we as humans have this problem. So if I'm right that someone who has a belief, has this belief, I'm not going to keep repeating it, that this kind of initial thing that I said in my argument, if they have this problem, it seems like we can sort this out among us finite fellows, and then we can be like, okay, does God have this problem?
Okay. One last thing on it then. I'm just wondering, the whole point of the God example is to wonder if you need to know in the first place what the mechanism of your cognitive faculties are and the nature of it to know that you can trust your sense perception and all that. That's, I think, what I want to getting at.
Yeah. And I think I would say to that I don't think I'm arguing along those lines. I don't think I'm saying like, because I'm fine with you saying like, hey man, I don't know the mechanism, and I'll be fine. I'm just saying from my perspective, it seems to me like it's either A or not A, right? It's either it's truth favoring or it's not truth favoring, whatever that mechanism is, right? And
couldn't it be neutral?
I don't see how it could be. So if it's neutral, that seems like it's not truth favoring.
So think. Okay, well maybe I'm so. I want to, yeah.
Okay, I think how you're thinking about it, I think maybe you're interpreting it as, I'm not saying it's either truth favoring or false belief favoring. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm saying it either favors truth producing or it doesn't.
Okay.
Like that's either something, it favors or it doesn't. So that seems to me to be like, that's just an A or not A.
Okay, that's right.
And so my thing is, I think if I believe my cognitive faculty, and so those are an option for anyone. And I'll say whatever the mechanism is, I think if you say it does favor truth production, then I have this separate little argument that I'll run for that. But if you say it doesn't favor truth production, then that just seems really epistemically problematic to me. Like if you believe it comes about from a process that's not truth favoring, then I think you have epistemic problems.
Okay, can we use
you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in the case of the Farouk case, right? Like where I believe in a mechanism that actually because you're right. You present a strict dichotomy, but what I'm thinking is there are you can put it into a trichotomy. Either it favors truth, favors falsity, or it's blind. It doesn't care, but. I'm wondering if it doesn't care matters, and I'm fine with saying that if it doesn't care, then it might undermine your confidence in the sense perception. So it was just a side note more than anything else. But I would agree with you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm using the doesn't care. I'm just saying, let's say it doesn't care. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It seems like there would be a problem, but now it gets into this, right? If let's say there's a mechanism that it all comes down to what it means to favor truth. And I think that we can break that a mechanism that favors truth, we can break it down to two categories, right? There's a sense of favoring truth where we're talking about an intention. I think, right? I mean, you said teleological, but there's a kind of teleology that's built into an intention, right? If God wants you to do this, or if his desire or his goal is to do that, that's teleological in a sense, right? And then so the intention for truth is distinct from the tendency for truth, which is perhaps. And
I want to make clear, when I say truth favoring, I do not mean that necessarily like there was a mind with teleology behind it. Because so for instance, like I think I said before, so like I know there are some atheists who are like, hey, listen, true beliefs are more likely to help survival, and natural selection is going to be more likely to select for those. I know that's not the story you're giving, but some people give that story, and so their position would be that they think the process was truth favoring, but they would think it's truth favoring in a way that doesn't apply to any type of teleology. So I'm using truth favoring in just a very
strict teleological. In a strict, you're using truth favoring in a strict teleological sense. Like we're talking about, because I want to say that there couldn't be a mechanism that has a tendency toward forming a tendency toward truth, or mechanisms that
I would call it truth favoring. Yeah.
Okay, but that doesn't require an intention, and if it doesn't require an intention, then I think it's compatible with a naturalistic view.
So this is why I pointed out that So this story that often gets brought up, which is that, okay, listen, natural selection is more likely to select for cognitive faculties which produce true beliefs. That's a story which is, I would say, truth favoring, and you've told me a truth favoring story that doesn't, appeal to God. So that's why I'm saying that's one in which I wouldn't say there's teleology there. But now I think that we get into this. So would I be accurate to say that your position is that whatever the mechanism is that brought about, our cognitive faculties, it was in some way truth favoring?
Yeah, I mean, or at least at the very least, that's, I would say that, but I sort of question, there's a lingering question. I'm still deciding what the relevance is, and like if I have to know that to be able to have confidence in my faculties, right? Like, am I committed to saying that there is in other words, if I trust my cognitive faculties, does that entail me to believe? Does that commit me to believing that there's a mechanism, given my fact that I'm finite and that something explains why I'm here, that whatever that mechanism is also truth favoring? Now, if let's say that conditional is true, well then I'm fine with saying then there is some unknown truth favoring mechanism that's compatible with naturalism and evolutionary biology, and then I don't see Plantinga's argument work anymore.
Yeah. So okay. So do you think then you personally lean towards that there being, because I mean at the end of the day, like, we're finite. Would you agree that we were caused, like in a general sense? We were caused, like our cognitive faculties, like something brought us about, and so maybe instead of mechanism, like just the cause of our cognitive faculties, that can be through a mechanism, that can be whatever. I'm just curious, you personally, do you think that the cause of our cognitive faculties, do you think it was one which favored the truth, and in just this really vague general way that I've been talking about?
Well, again, I'm unsure. Okay, so there's my view. Look, I think part of what's going on is that there's another lingering issue in the background of how Descartes set up, skepticism, and especially about the external world. And there's that. I really am not trying to bring that out because I think the kind of Cartesian set of assumptions that make it possible to be deceived about every single view, every single fact about the external world, there's assumptions there that I flatly reject. But so in other words, it's not possible, on my view, to be totally deceived. Okay, it's not possible to have all false beliefs about the external world, because in order to have false beliefs about the external world, you're going to have true beliefs about the external world, right? So so that's lingering in the background. I'm not so sure if we need to bring it out, but I think that we should focus on this conditional, right? If I believe that my cognitive faculties are trustworthy, then I'm committed to the mechanism of my cognitive faculties as being truth favoring. Now, I haven't really thought about that conditional too much, but let's say it's true. Then I don't think that would be a problem for someone that accepted evolutionary biology and naturalism. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so then at that point, so maybe we could grant that truth condition for the sake of argument, and then if you later you're like, oh, I thought about it more.
If that's true, then I would be committed to.
So then let's play with this idea then. So it's like, okay, let's say I have these cognitive faculties, and I believe that they favor towards truth. If I'm engaging in a reasoning process, I have to use some type of intuitions. I have to use some type of seemings, so to speak. Because unfortunately, that's where the rubber hits the road. Like even if we're doing, like syllogisms and stuff, like at some point we're using, noetic seemings and things like that. So it seems to me that if I think my cognitive faculties came about in a somehow truth favoring way, and let's say humanity in general. I'm talking about humanity in general here. And it seems like if there is an intuition that is widespread across humanity, and that intuition is just deplorably false, that seems to me, at least to some degree, really inconsistent with the idea of my cognitive faculties being truth favoring. And I'm not talking about just say okay, because no matter what position you take, there are people who disagree with you, right? Like, so I think humans were formed with, cognitive faculties that are reliable, yada, yada, but there are atheists, and it's vice versa. But if I'm talking about, it seems to me like if I say humans' cognitive faculties are, generally truth favoring, it seems to me like, to me, that sets up a test, which if I see that human cognitive faculties intuitively go to certain things, that seems to me, in conjunction with that last thing I just said, then that seems to be some prima facie support for that intuition, if it's that widespread and if my cognitive faculties favor truth.
Okay, so I'm trying to follow you here. So what are you trying to respond to exactly?
So we all engage, we all have intuitions about like rationality, logic, when one thing entails another. Something can have true and false at the same time, in the same sense. So let's say I'm trying to analyze that. Let's say I have these cognitive faculties, and I think they're generally, truth producing. Like, how do I sort out what is truth produced? What are the things that came about because it's truth favoring, and what are the things that are just whoopsies, like they slipped through? Like, how do I go about that process? And I will say, because it seems to me one of the potential problems here is that if I say, hey, I'm going to start using my reasoning to kind of go through this, I'm going to be relying on certain intuitions and processes, which are part of the things under debate. Do you see what I'm going down here?
I think so. I'm keeping in mind the argument as well, but go ahead.
Yeah, so because here's the thing, I think, and so this is something I said in.
But just to clarify, let me make sure I understand you. So yeah, there seems to be, when we're asking, okay, what are the truth conditions, or the how do I know a particular belief about the external world is true, or how do I know that anything's reliable? But if my cognitive faculties are reliable, well then, in order to come to some kind of determination of that, I would need to rely on the very thing that I'm trying to presupposing, or the very thing I'm trying to defend as being reliable. That's what I gathered, but I'm quite confident I haven't understood you.
Yeah, no, that's decent. I think I probably could have articulated it better. To me, if I see that there's an intuition that's really widespread throughout, I'm going to use humanity because we're talking about humans, that's us. Like, if I see, okay, instilled in human cognition, there's this intuition, and it's just widespread. Like, our brains just kind of naturally produce it.
Okay, like the belief that there's an external world. Is that a good example?
Okay, yeah, sure, that's a good one. Yeah,
okay, let's work with that.
Okay, I have cognitive faculties. I think they're generally, truth favoring in some way. It's like, okay, well, the fact that pretty much all humans like hold to that belief, that seems to me to be some pretty good grounds for thinking that the reasons they hold to that is because it's true, right? Like, I think that's maybe something like truth favoring beliefs, like they selected for in some way. I don't mean that in a natural selection way.
Okay.
Does that seem reasonable?
Well, I think all of this needs to be contextualized, like, because there are certain points of history where, there was universal belief in some view, and, if you didn't know any better, perhaps, again, whether universal or widespread belief is reliable or not will, I think, certainly depend on your priors, right?
Yeah, so I guess if our priors are that our cognitive faculties are truth favoring in some way, let me say that's our prior belief, then I guess does an intuition being kind of instilled in the human psyche, does that offer prima facie justification?
Okay, so you're saying that if we already know that there's a mechanism out there that favors truth, and so when it formed our cognitive faculties, that means the intuitions that come from those faculties are thus reliable, and so we have an intuition for something, then that would be evidence, and that would be evidence that it's true. Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
I think the way I would say it is like, if I think that my cognitive faculties were formed in a way that favors truth, and then I see is like, okay, my cognitive faculties and everybody else who has the same brand of cognitive faculties, like we're all coming to the same belief. It seems like that can be a form of prima facie justification for that belief. Like, that seems to be some evidence for that belief being true, just because of the nature of what I believe about the process that produced my cognitive faculties.
Okay, I'm sort of like, look, I have very different views than you. Like, I don't accept phenomenal conservatism. I don't and I don't see intuitions as justifiers, but maybe you mean something by justification very different than me. But I'm wondering how. So I think that I'm trying to tie this with the meat of the argument. So we're wondering if people that accept evolutionary biology and people that accept naturalism, right, are they committed to believing that there is a mechanism that does not favor truth? That's, I think, the
No,
okay.
I'm open to them saying that it favors truth. Like, because remember at this point we said, okay, let's just pretend that there's a truth favoring mechanism.
Oh, wait,
Like
okay,
at this point,
wait. To clarify, so you think that someone that holds to both evolutionary biology and naturalism could hold to a mechanism that favors truth?
so I have some. It depends on the mechanism. There's like I technically have some beliefs about like I think most physicalist or materialist views of the mind are going to entail semantic epiphenomenalism, but I don't want to beat that dead. I don't want to beat that horse here. I just want to kind of grant for the sake of argument that you have this option. So like me personally, I may like think like, oh, I think there are issues there, but like for the sake of argument, I'm fine to grant that and say, okay, tell you what, you know what? Let's say
But to me, Planaga would have a heart attack because he wants to say that the conjunction of those two do imply a self-defeating.
Oh no, that's the thing. Yeah, but he in order to argue for that, so he responds to the objection because one of the objections that's been raised against him is that naturalism, or excuse me, the evolutionary process is more likely to produce true beliefs than false beliefs. Like it's more likely to select those. So we should think our cognitive faculties are generally reliable. Now he has a whole thing responding to that, and I think I'm sympathetic to his response to that. But here's the thing: I think I can grant that, and I think I can still have a lot of fun with this argument. And so that's what I'm playing with here. And so it's like, well, yeah, like I personally, yeah, like I wrote an entire paper in my undergrad philosophy entailing like arguing for semantic epiphenomenalism under pretty much any form of materialism. And so I personally would argue for that. I don't think I need that conclusion to make headway here. And so that's why I'm just saying, yeah, let's just grant.
Well, then it seems like there's just a problem with naturalism.
Yeah, okay. I think there's a problem with naturalism.
Because I think what Planaga is trying to do is saying that, look, naturalism, and it's the conjunction that presents the issue. But now it sounds like you're not saying that.
Well, no, but to be fair, I said not too long ago that because your views of the mind and because you don't have a firm belief on the mechanisms that got us here, I said, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to try to press Alvin Plantinga's argument on you, because those are.
But what I'm wondering, what I'm wondering, okay, we agree. Look, you and I, let's say we're on a team here. We're not naturalists. We don't accept natural selection as the explanation for the mind. Now, to be fair to Plantinga, I think he wants to say evolutionary biological mechanisms. I don't even know if he mentions. I have to look back specifically natural selection, but
he does.
Okay. And so the point is that do those people have a problem?
Yeah. So what I'm arguing is that so he's arguing is like I'm taking this a different direction than Plantinga does. Like that's what I want to make clear.
Okay.
So if you're trying to fit what I'm saying into what Plantinga says,
that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah. So like I want to play with this idea of there being truth favoring processes, just in general. Like if you tell me you're a naturalist and you think, okay, I think my cognitive faculties are generally reliable. And so then because of that, you can trust these beliefs you have. You can trust these experiences, these intuitions and stuff like that. And kind of, here's what I'm thinking about this. If you give me that type of explanation, I'm going to say, hey, listen, pretty much all of humanity has the belief of the supernatural, and specifically with the belief in gods, things like that. And cognitive science of religion, for better or worse, seems to indicate that this is a belief, or like there are at least intuitions here that we just can't shake. Like these are things that they kind of naturally come about, even if you take people from like largely atheistic societies, even if you take people from, like the West, like there's this just general impulse and general intuition to think in these kind of supernatural ways. And there's actually been some really interesting cog-sci studies about how we perceive nature as having teleology behind it, and even atheists do this. I don't remember the specific paper. I had a video where I cited a paper on this, but essentially they give people pictures of things in nature and they say, do you think this was created with teleology behind it or something like that? I'm massively nutshell this. And they said, intuitively, do you think there was teleology behind this? And even atheists, when they're not given time to censor themselves, like when they have to give like gut instant remarks, like intuitively they come to they affirm like, yeah, this is teleology, like there's some type of design behind this. Mm-hmm. Now, that's just a little fun fact, but even if we kind of isolated the atheists and stuff like that as a small percentage, even if they didn't have that intuition, which I think they do, I'm gonna say, okay, listen, I think my cognitive faculties, supposedly they're truth favoring. And then I was like, okay, this is a pretty widespread intuition. This is a pretty widespread belief among humanity. It seems like the proper response here is to think that, there's some meat on this bone. It seems weird to disregard this intuition, this intuition widespread, especially when so much of this intuition is also coupled with people having the direct belief that they've experienced things in that realm. Mm-hmm. Do you kind of get what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, and look, I'm fine with, but I just want to clarify. Now it seems like we're going toward some kind of teleological argument, right? Like a design argument of a kind. And we kind of put, I feel like, and I could be wrong, we're putting Planet God on the shelf, which is fine. Are we not?
No, I'm not going to a teleological. I want to make that clear. I'm not.
Okay. Okay, so then I must not be understanding you. Because look, here's what I gathered from what you said, and I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding. So yeah, people you brought up when you present certain features, let's say in nature, to atheists and ask questions in teleological language, is this good for that, or is this for this? These structures that even amongst atheists, there's this tendency to say yes, right, and to affirm these statements that describe these features as having a function or a telos, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the first thing that I thought of in my mind is children, because if you ask a child, is this bark, do you think its function or it's meant for bears to scratch their backs? A lot of children would say yes to such a question, right? I don't think I would say yes, and I think a lot of people might giggle at such an answer. So I think there is this, even from a very young age, to attribute function and telos to things that we shouldn't attribute to. Now, maybe you want to say there's some kind of disanalogy with like the child case and then these other studies that you're pointing to, but I as far as I know, it's very similar. I think people foist telos on or functions on things that I think are unjustifiably that they can't be justified. But that was the first part of what you said. And then the second part is linking that to intuitions, right? Like, that given these studies, that the fact that they would describe these things as having a telos or a function, that is a kind of universal intuition that humans have. And then there's something there that you're wanting to go from, and I'm not understanding from that point on.
Put it simpler. You think that our cognitive faculties, or at least this is what we kind of granted for the sake of argument to play with this idea, is you said, okay, you think that our cognitive faculties were caused by a process that favors truth in some way. My question is like, well, okay, the human cognitive faculties overwhelmingly come to form belief in the supernatural. What's up with that?
Okay. Yeah. How do I explain that?
Yeah, like just in general, like what's going on here? Because I thought these cognitive faculties were supposed to be favoring truth, and then you're telling me they've favored falsehood on a massive scale, and on a scale that it seems to go right down to our bones. And that's something that affects pretty much, I mean, that's been a massive aspect of humanity's life. Like, I mean, even if you're an atheist, like that's something that is very culture. It's a huge part of just culture in general. So this seems to be at the core of humanity. There was a big uh-oh. But then you're also telling me that our cognitive faculties favor truth. And so my kind of thing is, I'm like, I don't understand how's that happening? Like, how can you affirm both of those at the same time?
Okay. First of all, I think that there's got to be more true beliefs than false beliefs. I think it's necessarily entailed. Okay. For every false belief, you have to have dozens and dozens of true beliefs to make sense of the falsity of that statement. So for instance, I believe, let's say I believe that my grandmother rose from the dead, right? Because of the spirit rose her back up from the dead. I have to have true beliefs about ghosts, or what, that you have to have true beliefs, in terms of the concept. Go ahead. Did you want to interrupt?
Yeah. So I know you're just getting started, but I think I can push back on this claim because I think I can think of a society which is systematically deluded with false beliefs, and like pretty much every belief they believe is false in some way. So let me give an example. Like, let's say I'm in a tribe, and for some reason, they think everything is witches. Like when they look at a tree, they don't say like that tree is a witch, or they don't say that's a tree. They say, oh, that's a witch that's treeing, or something like that. They think so like I can come up with a society in which all their false beliefs behind those false beliefs are just more false beliefs. So like, why is that a witch treeing? It's like, oh, well, that's a false belief. What's the reason for that false belief? Other false beliefs about what other witches are doing and things like that. Because, the water, that's also witches, and the sun, that's also witches. Like, it's false beliefs all the way down.
So I don't have to. What do they say? Wait, so let's say we encounter. I'm trying to understand what their beliefs are. So you and I meet with a member of this tribe.
Yeah.
I point to the tree, they then look at the tree. First of all, they have to have beliefs about me pointing. They have to have beliefs about. Would they have beliefs that I'm there? Like, could you talk to these people?
Yeah, so let's suppose that they have some. So, but you made the claim that for any false belief, there are going to be more true beliefs behind it. So it could be. So let's say they have the belief that when you pointed, they had the belief that he made it appear that he was pointing when he really wasn't. Maybe they have the belief that you were doing psychologically something to their mind that you didn't actually raise your hand. So now they've explained their belief of you're pointing. Now that's also been explained by a false belief.
Okay, so my claim that you've got to have. Okay, so we'll jump back to this, but do you think that you have if you're in a brain in a vat, or if you're in a dream, do you think you have true or false beliefs in those cases?
I think I would say that most of my beliefs are false.
Okay. You see, that's where, okay. So I don't think those sort of scenarios are possible, right? If you're in a brain in a vat, maybe think of it this way, but I don't know if that ties into defending my claim that in order if you have all these beliefs about
I need to run to the restroom. Do you want to just take a second to think about it? It'll take me like 20, 30 seconds.
I need something to drink anyway, so
yeah,
1 second.
Fine. We'll do that then.
Okay. Oh, he's not back.
Oh, I'm back. Good timing.
Oh, you're back? Okay, so first of all, I'm trying to engage with, okay, so someone that believes that everything is witches, they're going to have beliefs about women and brooms and magic and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but let's say all those beliefs are false for some reason too.
Well, the point is that they're going to have true beliefs about what a witch is. And that if they know what a witch is, there's all these
What's the true belief about what a witch is?
A witch is a woman.
Okay, so but what if they believe that's a witch, but for some reason they think a witch is a man? Boom. Now all their beliefs about witches.
Now that I don't even understand what they believe, like
exactly,
now,
because it's all false beliefs, right? So
no, there's going to be a point where I don't even know how to interpret them, right? Like,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's going to be a point where I don't even know how to interpret such a person.
Okay, yeah, but for some reason, right? Like that, you may not know how to interpret that person. But in that situation, let's say they believed everything was witches, and for some reason they thought witches were men. According to the definition of witch you just gave, all of their beliefs are false because they all incorporate witches, and that aspect of their belief is false. So then they could go about their lives and be like, oh, make sure to get the water witch from the thing, and put it on the fire witch before we go to.
Well, look, if the point is that we're interpreting this person. You're telling me it's something correct, that they do have this false belief, and so when they express that, when they have that belief, it's in principle interpretable, right? Like we could have in principle access to that, the fact that they have that false belief, right? But then, okay.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
No. What were your thoughts?
Well, I just wanted to be careful not to shift us interpreting their beliefs from their beliefs. Because if we're talking about whether or not their beliefs are true or false, I mean, I take something generally related to a correspondence theory of truth. Like, okay, or do their beliefs correspond to reality? And so whether or not I can make any sense of what they're saying seems peripheral to whether or not their beliefs are to whether or not their beliefs are true or false. Like even if I couldn't understand anything that was going on there, like even if I couldn't interpret their beliefs when they tell it to me at all, it could still be the case that all of their beliefs are true or that all their beliefs were false. Like that's an epistemic thing an issue that I have when it comes to understanding their beliefs.
Are you so in this hypothetical, we know that they have this belief, right?
Yeah, let's say we know they have that belief.
Okay, but that would mean that I know what they mean by woman.
Okay, so let's say they mean by woman what you mean by woman.
Okay, so that means that they have a true belief that that a witch is a woman.
Okay, so let me ask you this: Is it possible if A entails B? Is it possible to believe A without also believing B?
Not in every case.
So, for instance, you think Christians have issues with like problem of evil and stuff like that? Like you probably think a lot of Christians, we don't follow all of the entailment of our beliefs, right?
Yeah. So yeah.
So then you think I hold to one belief, and despite the fact that that belief entails something else, I don't believe that other belief. So if you think I can do that, why can't the witch people do it as well?
No, I mean, not when it comes to the meaning of a term. Like you have self-knowledge about what you mean when you use a term, and you can't be wrong about that. So there's no, I guess it's not it's not
out of this. What if we just made it spirit? What if we just said it's a spirit? They think about everything as spirits.
Everything is spirits.
Yeah. So now there's not this. Okay, what is a woman? We're not gonna get into that. So, and also feel free, because I know we're kind of going on a side.
I mean, look, okay, but before you go on, it's like when we talk to woo-woo people, when they say everything is God, everything is consciousness, I don't know how to interpret that. I don't know what it means. Like,
no, I agree too. Yeah.
I can't even say, but the point is that I can't even say that they have a false belief because I can't interpret it.
Okay, so then we'll tell you what then. Why don't we do this? Because I cut you off while you were starting to make an argument about there being more true beliefs than false beliefs, things like that. And we kind of went on this rabbit trail. So why don't we back up a little bit, and then I can let you finish that thought. And because I mean, it may be that I don't want to. We've kind of gone down this rabbit trail. I don't want to undercut the point you were going to make if this is something that's maybe irrelevant or silly. So maybe we could go back and I can finish it.
Well, I want to say that the stuff we're getting at here with this philosophy of language and then the epistemology gets really, really complicated fast. I think that like the Cartesian scenarios are impossible for the reasons laid out in a paper called Realism and Relativism. But though articulating the details of that paper is very difficult for me to do, right? And I definitely wasn't prepared to defend the elements of that paper. But it's still, for the record, it's peripheral to the initial disagreement that we had. But this is the easiest way to convey what I think, right? If someone, how can I get graphic? Like no, I shouldn't get graphic. Yeah, okay.
Be careful, dude. TikTok's so lately they're on you like white on rice.
Okay, let's do this. Okay, let's say a mad scientist kidnapped you. Okay, and have you seen Inception?
Yes, love it.
Okay, so the mad scientist had all those chemicals to put you under and enter your dream and control your dream. Okay, and for some reason they waterboarded you for information in that dream. Okay, and they got the information that they wanted, and then they let you go. When you were being waterboarded, was it true that you were being waterboarded?
if I have the belief I am being waterboarded, I would say that belief is false. Now, if you say you were being waterboarded in the dream, I might be like, yeah, that's more true. I mean,
You
because
see,
like I think so. I last night, I don't remember what I dreamed last night. I just remember vagueness. So let's say something. I think I went on a road trip. There was something about driving. So I would say it's true that I drove in my dream last night. I wouldn't say it's true I drove last night. Do you feel me?
yeah, this is why I wanted to use a graphic example, because I think
That's fine.
that, right, so I'm going to use a graphic example. Suppose an innocent woman gets kidnapped, right?
Hmm.
And same process, except it's not waterboarding.
Yeah, I
It's
think I know what you're gonna say. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
all right, it's graping.
yeah.
No,
There you go.
I'm going to believe she was graped. It doesn't matter whether she was in a dream or if she was in a brain in a vat or whether she was in reality, right?
Hmm.
So what I'm getting at is I'm a pragmatist about truth. Okay.
Okay.
And so that factor, that's kind of in the background of this discussion, right? And so the pragmatists look at the Cartesian epistemological setup as flawed, right? And it creates these problems where if you were waterboarded, well, it's not you were when you're here and you're explaining to your wife they tortured me for information, it would be false, but it wouldn't be false, right? I mean, to me, when you say they tortured me in the dream, to me that's no different than saying they would tortured me in that building. Okay,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah. So then, can you help then bring this stuff that we've been talking about and connect this back into my concern that I originally articulated? And I'm the
yes.
one who derailed. I derailed you, so that's not on you.
So
Yeah. So bring that back
if
home to that concern I raised.
and again, I'm not confident about the relevance, but this is why I brought it up because a pragmatist theory of truth, right, is not going to be so much concerned about the mechanisms that explain your experiences and the way you're perceiving things, right? So I don't. You're asking me what is the mechanism of your mind, right? Um, well, suppose it's a
No,
mechanism that
well, just to make clear to so everyone, because I know we have a few people come in. The question is like if you're telling me a story and you're telling me if you're telling me your cognitive faculties were caused in a way that are truth favoring, then why do we have such widespread, ingrained, belief in the supernatural? I mean, there seems to be a conflict there, and it seems to me like you're wanting to, in some way, maybe change what you mean when we're talking about truth. And if you wanna adopt a pragmatist definition or something like that,
Mhm.
we can talk about that. But I don't know my intuition here is I don't think adopting some form of pragmatism is gonna help.
Well, let me explain why, right?
Go for it.
If I so suppose I find out that this mechanism um that strongly favors for falsity, right?
Okay.
In fact, let's say all false beliefs about the external world, then I'm like, and that would be compared to the brain in a vat. That's essentially a brain in a vat.
Okay, I see it. Okay, I'm on board. Okay, so I think then this may be a disconnect. So if
I
let's
know
say
that's
that
not what
you
you were saying. I know that's not
no
what you were
no no
saying. Okay,
I
okay,
get you
okay.
I get you. So I think this might be interesting then. So let's say you have a cause of your cognitive faculties, and they cause your cognitive faculties to come to be the case that they are just demonstrably false, like they're unreliable, but they're useful, like in this pragmatic sense, they're useful. You would want to say it was like, okay, now they're true. Is that
Okay, so
right?
you're on the right track, except that there's different senses of pragmatism. I don't know if you know, but people like Wittgenstein leaned on the pragmatic theory of truth, as well as Donald Davidson is a straight up, I think, pragmatist, as well as Richard Rorty. I could be wrong on Rorty, but the point is not that truth is useful, like in the sense that it has utility for survival and reproduction. That's an equivocation on on like that would be an equivocation on the word utility if we were going to say truth is a function of utility. That's not. I'm not thinking even in the maybe in the Jamesian sense of pragmatism. It's a specific type of pragmatism. The kind of renewed form of pragmatism is a little bit more sophisticated than just saying truth is just whatever we want or whatever is useful to our goals. Right? It's that truth itself is something like the goal of our inquiry. Okay. Now, but maybe it's very hard to define truth. I don't even think I want to do that. I don't even know how to define. It's very difficult to define truth. But the point is this: that how I make a determination about whether my faculties are reliable or not has to do with whether the predictions that I expect from my true beliefs come to fruition. Okay.
Wait. It seemed like you were saying that if the goal, whatever the goal of our cognitive faculties was, that is what's true.
It's that when we're asking questions, what's our goal when we're asking questions like, what is 2 + 2? Well, our goal is the truth.
Okay, but I'm having trouble understanding what the truth is now according to your view, because and please correct me, because I'm not as well read in the pragmatic literature as it seems like you are. So it seems like truth then just is whatever our cognitive faculties come to believe. Like it seems like anything your cognitive faculties produce at that point, you're going to be led to saying that's true.
Okay, I don't want. That's not. I'm not blaming you for this, right? Because it's very hard for me to explain. I've only read. You see, I debate about theistic stuff all the time. I'm used to explaining theistic stuff. This is something I've explained maybe one time in my life, and I read a paper a year ago about this. So I was not prepared to explain that paper. But if defining truth, I'm not prepared to define truth to you. Okay, I am I am ready to explain its function. Okay. Insofar as that when we ask questions, the function of truth is the ends of those questions, right? When we ask questions, when we wonder about things, there's something that we're trying to reach, and that is truth. And that's what makes it a kind of a pragmatic thing. Okay. Now, if you would allow for me to put that on the shelf for just a bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And focus on this, right? Like, how, when you're being waterboarded in your dream, when you were kidnapped, right? Let's say the guy says that, okay, you see, that's water over there. I'm going to dunk your head if you don't give me the information I want. The belief that there is water there is true if and only if he sticks your head in there and you feel the water suffocate you or you're unable to breathe in it. Now, what would it mean if you believe that there's water there and then they dunked your head in and you could breathe just like you're breathing now? Then you would revise. You'd be like, oh, this is not really water, right?
But it seems like you're making a distinction between how we come to know things, how we come to know truth, and what actually is true. This just seems like a confusing of epistemology and ontology.
No, okay, I can see why you would say that, but so you're saying, I'm saying, what does it mean for me to tell you that it's true that there's water right in that bucket, right? And and for me, what it means is meeting a certain set of predictions that if it were water, I would suffocate or drown in it without assistance, right? And if it doesn't meet that prediction, then it's just not true.
Okay, so in this scenario, let's say you're in the desert, no water's around, you've been put under, and you're about to be dunked, you're about to be waterboarded. You start to get waterboarded. You have the belief I'm being waterboarded because you don't know you're in a thing. You're saying it's true that you're saying it's true that I'm dying from water.
I said I didn't know if it was water. Sorry.
It seems like you're saying it's true that, and so then I come to the form of the belief, oh, I'm dying from water. Well,
look, there are a lot of these predictions.
Are you suggesting that's a true belief that I have?
I didn't understand can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, so that's fine. So I'm in the desert. I've been kidnapped by what's his name? Leonardo DiCaprio and his team.
Okay.
And whatever 25-year-old girl he's dating. They're there. We're in the desert. And he's got me in a dream that seems like there's a bunch of water around.
Oh, it is a dream. It is a dream.
Yeah, it's a dream.
Oh, okay. I missed that part. Okay.
Yeah. And so he's like, tell me your social security number or I'm going to waterboard you to death. And it seems like, there's water. He sticks my head in. I'm experiencing pain. I'm like, oh man, I'm about to die. Water's about to kill me. I come to have this belief, well, I'm about to die from water. Are you saying that that belief that I formed is a true belief?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, there's more to those predictions. Water has a certain phenomenal quality when it's like there's how it is. If you open your eyes, there's going to be a certain feeling. Or if you're not able to see, then you might think that it's not just water. The point is that for me, truth is a matter of how it's relevant to the way that we experience the world. This is why I think that if someone kidnapped a woman and raped her in a dream, that it would be true that she was raped, even though we might say in some sense that the dream is not real, right? Like, so
Can I ask you a few more questions? So let's say, let's then say that same situation, but as I'm about to get dunked into the water, I'm like, I know this is a dream. I know Leo. I know his tricks. And let's say I think, yeah, I'm not gonna die from this, or let's say I don't have water. Now, does the truth of that belief that I have, does that now change?
It doesn't
That
change.
I didn't have. I don't have.
All that does is that if I'm a dream, again, what it means to be in a dream is to make predictions. That if Leo puts a bullet in my head, I'll wake up. But if I don't wake up, right? If I don't wake up, then I had a false belief, right? Because that's what it meant to me when I say I'm in a dream, is that I can in principle wake up.
Okay. So
whereas I don't think I'm in a dream now, because if someone puts a bullet in my head, I'm not waking up.
Okay, so what if I believe like I'm about to die from water, and then I don't die from that? Like, let's say it doesn't do anything. You're saying then that that's a false belief.
Wait, in the dream, sorry, you're in the dream, or we're on the
I'm
dream?
in the dream.
Okay.
And I believe I'm about to die from water.
Uh-huh.
You're saying
that would be a false belief, right? If die means cease to exist, it would be a false belief.
Okay. So, but if I say if I say I believe I'm about to die from water, and I don't actually die, you say that belief is false because I didn't die.
It would be something like the true belief that I'm about to wake up because the water is going to cause me to wake up, or something like that.
But let's say I'm actually I'm just having a hard time parsing like what in the world truth is right now. But that's fine. But here's the thing: I'm also having a hard time understanding how theism doesn't become true under the definition that you just gave.
Okay.
Because it seems like for a theist to have true belief, then like it doesn't matter if there's a God out there or not. All that matters is about their experiences and their expectations.
Okay, but remember, there's logical coherency. Okay, so you can't have, if you have a belief, you have certain logical axioms, and look, so let's just say theism is logically coherent. Okay, there's a difference between believing that something is true and then being justified, right? So
okay, so do you think in the dream I was justified in thinking I would die from water?
Right.
Okay, so then theists are justified in believing in God if their experiences indicate that, even if the thing that they think they're experiencing isn't actually there.
Okay, look, if you experience something, right, then when we experience something like color, okay, I don't really think that, like, to say that I'm justified in believing that, or that I'm experiencing it as black, or that it is black, is different than saying that I'm like justified in believing that there's something black in a room that I'm not in, right? Or that
I'm not sure.
Okay, so
sorry, could you repeat that?
When I perceive, so the way justification works when it comes to perception is very different than talking about justification when we're talking about beliefs that don't come from perception. So when I see black, the way that justification might work there, it's going to be very different than believing that there's a black table on the other side of the room. Because one belief is perceptual, the other one isn't, right? So in the case of the water, right? Did you look like you opened your mouth?
Yeah, so it just seems to me like you're switching between, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding. It seems like you're switching between how you want to use truth, because it seems like before truth was very loose. Like you could have a belief that most people would consider to be false because it doesn't correspond with reality. But then you would define that as true just because certain expectations that you had were met. But now, when it comes to this God question, it seems like you're kind of going back to a more correspondence theory of truth, and you're getting into like more general like forms of justification, like internalism, like is stuff
Well,
like
wait,
that.
but
I think maybe
okay.
I'm just getting like pragmatic whiplash between, or maybe I'm getting metaphysical whiplash between the different versions, the different understandings of truth that we're kind of bouncing between here.
Okay, so on the first hand, I've never provided a definition of truth.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
okay, and so the first thing, so to see whether I'm being consistent amongst these various beliefs is I would only be inconsistent if I use different definitions in each of this case. And actually, I'm actually kind of open to a pluralist notion of truth. I think, but I'm not. I haven't figured that out yet. The point is that when it comes to truth about our sense perception, right? And the external world with respect to our sense perception, the way that I understand when I tell someone that I believe that there's water in that bucket, what it means for that to be true is that that it would meet certain predictions about how water normally interacts with my experience, right? If it's water, right, and then like I can breathe in it, or and amongst some other crazy stuff that we don't know, then I'm just going to doubt that I was right, right? So that it was not true that it was water, but I could still be justified. That's the interesting thing too, right? I could be justified.
Back up. Okay, so let's say that I have a vial sitting in front of me.
Okay.
And I believe that that vial has cyanide in it. And let's say I drink the vial, and I think, oh, if I drink this vial, I'm going to die. I'm not alive. So I drink the vial. Well, actually, it had hemlock in it, and I die. It's like, okay, well, the expectations, like the things that my predictions were, they're the same. Was my belief that it was cyanide, was that true? Because it seems like you would need to affirm, yes, that was true.
But there are way more predictions to whether, if I believe that it's cyanide, I distinguish cyanide from hemlock, right? Then they're going to...
Let's say I'm stupid. I have no clue. All I know is cyanide is poisonous. All I know is hemlock is poisonous. I'm just wandering through this.
Well, then
this
cyanide...
workshop, and I'm like, oh.
Then cyanide and hemlock. Then in that case, cyanide and hemlock have the same sense of the term. They're the same concept. So you didn't have a false belief.
But no, but let's say I have a belief, but let's say I have other beliefs about cyanide. Like, I don't know how cyanide is. Let's say I think cyanide comes from such and such.
Cyanide is green, right? I could be wrong. Okay, cyanide is green.
Okay, yeah, but let's say I think cyanide comes from such and such a plant from such and such a region.
Okay.
And let's say I think hemlock comes from another, plant from another region, right? Like another side of the world. So it's like, okay, these things, like the beliefs that I have about the drug in question, it's not my beliefs aren't just about the thing that's going to happen to me. It's also about, these other things. And so let's say I make a mistake and I'm like, okay, boom, I think this is cyanide. It's actually hemlock. I think this is, I think this is this plant from halfway across the world. It's cyanide. It's going to kill me. That's the only expectation I have, is that it's going to kill me. I drink it. According to you, my belief is true.
Well, first of all, I don't build into the concept of a thing its origin or its explanation.
But I'm saying, let's say I have that belief about the poison.
Okay.
So I think this poison is cyanide.
Okay.
I simultaneously have beliefs about cyanide and its origin. So I'm just trying to figure out this belief. I think this is cyanide. I think this is this plant. Let's say it originates from, I don't know, like Africa or something. I know so little about where cyanide
Can I change your analogy to make it exact? I think like a little bit more easier. I think you can. And if it's a bad analogy, we can return to it. But look, take water.
I like my analogy.
I think I have a better one, and you can go. And promise you can veto. Okay. Okay. You have a glass of sweet of what, when you try it, it's sugar water. It tastes like exactly like sugar water, and you think that's what it is. Yeah. But really, it's ethylene glycol. Okay. Now, ethylene glycol and sugar water. Let's say that they have the same viscosity, they look the same, they have all the same, when you perceive it with your eyes and you smell it, exact same thing. I think ethylene glycol is actually odorless, just like water too. So this is like the hemlock and cyanide, right? Except the hemlock and cyanide, they're different colors, right?
Okay.
Okay. So,
but this ethanol thing, this is something distinct from sugar.
Right, sugar water. Right, ethylene glycol. That's why it's so dangerous, because you can pour it in drinks and you cannot notice. You can poison.
Okay, but one I'll die from and one I won't. Is that what you're
Right.
suggesting?
Mm-hmm.
No, then that's not a good analogy because I want the same outcome.
Okay.
I want death to be the outcome no matter what. This is a weird sentence to say, but this is what philosophy is.
Yeah, you're right. Let's return. So two different poisons. They phenomenally look the same, but I believe it's cyanide, and then the other one is but it's really hemlock, right?
Yeah, really hemlock.
Yeah, and so for what it means for me to be wrong, for it not to be true that it's cyanide, or that it would imply a certain kind of chemical investigation of, if I looked at it under a microscope and did all these things, then it would not survive the test of cyanide. That's what I would understand it. But in that case, I don't.
But that's epistemology then. Like you were defining truth as, I expect X to happen, X happens, it met my expectations, therefore my belief is true.
I'm not saying that it's... Look, I'm justified in that case for it. Let's say, can we just establish that I'm justified in thinking that it's cyanide?
I'm justified in thinking it's cyanide?
Because...
No, I wouldn't say that.
Because I know it sounds like I'm confusing the... I guess the ontology with the epistemology, but I'm not. I'm telling you what it means for it to truly be cyanide is that it would meet all those predictions about what cyanide implies.
Okay, cool. So then, by that same definition, when I'm drowning in the dream, that's not true because that would not meet all the predictions. My actual physical body...
It does,
because my actual physical body is not experiencing water. Like, I'm not actually having water go up my nose. So
what do you mean by actually? What do you mean by actually?
There is not H2O that is flowing into this thing right here.
There is, right? I mean, look, H2O and...
But part of your thought experiment was it wasn't.
It is water. Wait, I thought it was... No, the thought experiment is that I'm in a dream and I'm being waterboarded.
Yeah, and so you're saying, like, if I could test this, if I was actually being waterboarded, the thing you were telling me was cyanide, is like, okay, in the cyanide thing, it wouldn't be a true belief, because if I could hypothetically...
I see. In the water case, you're saying that if I believe that water is H2O, but it's actually like H3O in this dream, or XYZ.
No, I'm going back to the dream scenario. So, let's back up. Yeah. So let me make sure I understood your truth condition with the poison and cyanide. The poison, the cyanide, I have the belief that it's cyanide. You think it's a false belief.
Because it's hemlock, right?
Yeah. So I think it's cyanide. I drink it. It's actually hemlock. You think it's a false belief.
It is a false belief.
Okay. So it's a false belief, and the reason it's a false belief is because hypothetically, if I ran all these chemical tests on it, if I did this other stuff, if I could do that, let's say maybe I'm big dumb, I can't do those things, but let's say hypothetically if I did,
right?
If I did those things, it wouldn't meet those.
It wouldn't stand the test of the nature of cyanide, right? Okay.
So there's this thing which it is to be cyanide, and it wouldn't meet those things.
Exactly.
Okay, if we take that standard and we go back to, Leo, and he's captured me, and I'm in a dream, and he's waterboarding me, by that same standard, if I have the belief I am being waterboarded, and I apply that same scenario, that's a false belief.
Why would it be? No.
Hypothetically, if I was to investigate that, I should expect to see my physical body having water go into it. I should. If I could.
All those predictions could be met.
No, but I'm not actually being waterboarded according to you, so that prediction wouldn't be met.
I'm not seeing how you're getting there. So again, the Leo case, I'm in the dream. If I broke out, right, of Leo, and I unalived Leo and his friends, and then I did something really weird. I collected that sample of water that they had for me waterboarding, and then I went in this magical place where there's a lab, and I tested it all, and it survived all the tests of H2O. Then I was justified. I wasn't justified, but I was not only justified in believing that it was water.
That's all in the dream, right?
Huh?
But that's all in the dream, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but that wouldn't meet your conditions, because for if I have the belief my body is being waterboarded, not just I'm being waterboarded in a dream, like my mind is experiencing water. If I have the belief my body is being waterboarded.
Oh, my body, as in the body.
If I have the belief that my physical body is being waterboarded, then it seems like for that truth condition to be met, if we're going to take the truth condition you applied to the cyanide thing, the truth conditions that need to be met for that is that my physical body outside the dream needs to be having water in contact.
No. The body that I'm currently in. The body that I can point to, right? Like in the dream, I point to a body.
But that's not your physical actual body.
That is my physical body in the dream.
In the dream, but that's not your I have dreams in which I think I'm talking to my wife. That's not actually my wife. I've had dreams where my teeth fall out. That wasn't actually my teeth. Like at any point in which I had that dream.
Why isn't it actually your wife? Why isn't it actually your wife?
Okay, I'm going to say something that this is going to sound a little pejorative. I don't mean it to be this way. But if this is the position you have to commit yourself to avoid my argument, I'm actually feeling pretty good about my argument. Like, if you have to say that, and I know this sounds really, dickish, and I'm sorry, but, this just seems like a really bizarre, insane position to me.
If someone kidnapped a family member and tortured them in a dream, you're going to say that when they came out of the dream, that they had true beliefs about being tortured. Okay, on your view, but if you're accepting the Cartesian, wait, almost done. If you're accepting if you're accepting the Cartesian assumptions, you're committed to say that it was not true that they were tortured.
Okay, so I have let's both of us, because both of us are into philosophy and we're getting excited. Let's both take a second just to. I'm doing it too, right? So let's because we've had a fun discussion, and I don't want either one of us to get worked up and lose it.
Oh, I'm not worked up. Trust me, I'm not worked up.
Okay, cool. Okay. So I would say I was tortured in my dream because torture has this broad definition of to inflict inflict suffering upon. So that's a very broad thing. So I would say I was tortured in my dream. So let me ask you this.
Wait, cool. Before you ask, is it true that you were tortured? True or false?
I would say I was. If you define torture as have suffering inflicted upon me by another person, then I would say yes, I was tortured because I experienced psychological suffering. Now, if the person, let's say in the dream, the form of torture was something like they were breaking my fingers with a sledgehammer.
Right.
I wouldn't say that it's true that my fingers were being broken with a sledgehammer. Like, I wouldn't say that statement is true. I would say I thought it was true. It seemed like it was true to me. But that's just how good the dream was. Like, that was a false belief. I was justified, but it was a false belief. And that seems like a really intuitive way of thinking about this.
I don't think it's intuitive at all.
Okay. So then, since I don't think that with this definition of truth, you and I may see eye to eye on this. So let me ask you this: if one doesn't adopt this kind of schema of truth that you're working with, is there any other way to get out of my argument?
Well. Okay, so if we're accepting the Cartesian assumptions,
what do you mean by Cartesian assumption? If you don't
that you can be totally deceived about the external world. Every single belief is coherent to say that every single one of your beliefs about the external world is false.
Well, let's say I think that's false. Let's say I say, okay, maybe you can have 99. You have 99 false beliefs, but this ain't one, right? Maybe I say, okay, you have one true belief, and then or let's say you have 1% true belief. So then it's not the Cartesian scenario. But you're in a really bad lot, right? I can grant that to you for the sake of argument or something like that.
Okay. So then it comes down, I think for me, okay, so there's two questions. Like, for the question you asked, is there something wrong with your argument, right? And now that I gave my theory of truth, and now I'm so distracted, your argument is argument against naturalism, not necessarily the conjunction of naturalism and evolutionary biology, right? Is that correct?
So the argument that kind of got us going down this line is my thing of saying, if you tell me that your cognitive faculties were caused by something that favors truth, and you turn around and you recognize that humans overwhelmingly believe in the supernatural, and that's something we intuitively believe, like it's really ingrained in us, and you think that belief is false, that those beliefs about the supernatural.
Oh, okay, I remember now. Okay.
Something here seems off. Like, there seems to be something hinky going on here between these things. If you tell me this one thing and you tell me this other, and you think all these beliefs are false, I'm going to say there seems like a contradiction here. Or there seems like something hinky is going on. Like, okay, that doesn't make sense.
So if I'm saying, well, obviously I probably have false beliefs right now. I mean, you probably do too. It's not
I do too, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
But the question is, number one, whether the faculties that we have are reliable. And so just pointing out that, look, we're all deceived about this one particular truth, does that undermine my claim that there's got to be a mechanism out there that favors truth and forming our what do you call it? Forming our cognitive faculties and stuff? Am I misunderstanding something?
Like, if I think, and I say our, like, in this humanity sense, if I think our cognitive faculties, like, the process of forming, like, they came to have this belief. And for many people, the belief and the intuition of God and the supernatural, that's actually a stronger intuition and a stronger belief than even things that you and I would say, like, something like law of non-contradiction. Like, if they were I talk to Christians who are like this, and
my parents are like that. So
I'm like, listen, like, I think I rank intuitions
I have
about
Christians that are more confident that God exists than they exist. I've literally heard that before.
So that's how ingrained this is, and this belief. This isn't just something that's like a one-off, like, kind of metaphysical oopsie. Like, this is something that's deeply ingrained in the practice of culture and our society. Like, it deeply affects everything. And if you tell me, like, our cognitive faculties got something this magnificent, like, something this magnificently wrong, and it made it this magnificently central, and it gave us these cognitive faculties that made it this intuitive, and you also tell me that, oh, you can trust your cognitive faculties. I was like, man, the thing you said a while ago really makes me doubt the thing that I can trust about my cognitive faculties, because it got this wrong, and it got all the intuitions which undergird this wrong. Like, that just seems to make me want to doubt everything else, because, like, that's how central this is. Like, why should I trust any of these other things? So to me, there seems to be a really strong tension here, because this belief is. It is so natural, and when I say natural, I mean, like, naturally forming from a cog sci perspective, and so prominent, and so so ingrained in not just our beliefs. Like, this isn't just a belief. Like, this is something we practice, and it's cultural. Like, this is such a. I mean, I don't say this just because I'm a religious person. Like, this seems like almost.
Okay. Well, I definitely.
The core of being human is having these religious beliefs, and that's not to me that say, oh, if you don't have these, you're not human. I'm just using this in this, like, anthropological sense. And so if you tell me, like, our cognitive sciences, like, our cognitive processes, they made something this central and this wrong, I'm like, that just really doesn't seem like it's a truth-favoring process to me.
Yeah, I'm not so sure exactly what to say.
And can I give one more thought to that? And so, because I know I want to let you finish. And so it's like, if I'm at that point and I recognize it got something that central wrong, I don't think any other type of intuition or thing that my cognitive faculty gives me is gonna be able to, like, topple that issue or, like, overcome that issue. Because, I mean, it's like, okay, well, like, I'm using this intuition or this thing that seems reasonable to me to topple this, but the thing I'm toppling, like, this seems just as strong, if not stronger, and it's supposedly wrong. So, like, why should I trust this thing? Like, do you get where I'm coming from here?
Yeah. Look, I think I thought about. I mean, look, as an ex-Christian, I know that you disagree, but I'm extending I'm meeting you here. I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, if Christianity is false, this looks like a conspiracy theory, like that so many people, I mean, think about it. Like, if I'm right, you're going to look back at the whole history of Christianity and be like, oh my gosh, people were chasing after all this falsity, not just billions of people, right? Like, and you just wonder, you shock, and you're at all like, wow, the world has been, like, duped. And it's not just Christianity. It's like all, it's from an atheist perspective, it's like, it is kind of like the Twilight Zone. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like, all of these people are buying all this nonsense, right? And I'm no offense, I okay. Okay. So now what now am I faced with in the realization that so many people are deceived about that issue? Okay. So, first of all, I think Kant might help us here a little bit, because Kant tried to get at why people are so bad at philosophy and metaphysics, right? Like, the point is that when we're talking about causation, time, God, minds, and stuff like that, this is in a world that's very that you can't just apply a kind of third person point of view thing where like you're like you can't. It's just hard for me to explain. I have the quote. Can I just unless you don't care?
No,
I have the quote. And this is when I read this, I was like, oh my god, because this. If you look, you like philosophy. Philosophers, no matter where you stand, it looks like there's confusion everywhere, and it makes you doubt. Oh my gosh, do I have the right views? And it's not about like theism and atheism. That's not just it. If you look at any other issue in philosophy, there is like
to make sure disagreement is a real thing. Yeah.
There's no agreement. I have the give me 1 minute. I have the book right here somewhere.
Fine. Go for it.
Okay, give me. It's like and then I'll read what Kant's analysis here is, and I'm very, very sympathetic. But it's I might have to pull up the PDF if I don't find it fast enough. Yeah, it looks like I'm gonna have to pull up the PDF. But you know Van Wagen's book Metaphysics. It's like I would recommend that book.
I've read some of Van Wagen a while ago. I don't remember that book.
Okay, it's just an intro book to metaphysics. So let me pull up my PDF because I don't want to butcher it. Okay, I really don't. Okay.
Yeah, I have, while you do that, I'm gonna say something to your chat real quick.
Okay.
So as we've been talking, I've seen pop up various things in the chat, or a variation of this statement. Either host is cooking or guest is cooking. I've seen these both. And while I get that in things like this, like I understand why no matter what your position is, you may feel compelled to say something like that. I would encourage you guys to refrain from no matter whether or not you think I'm cooking, whether or not you think he's cooking, like just refrain from those things. Because I don't think they foster the right type of attitude for dialogue. Like in general, like this isn't a team sport. This isn't. Brendan is cooking. Brendan is making actual food right now. Okay, someone said host and guest are not cooking. That's better. That's better. I guess to some degree, because then at least we're on the same page. I would just encourage everyone to come to the conversation and instead of it being, oh, this guy's getting punked on, even if you think it's me that's doing the punking, I would rather you all just be polite and.
Okay, so I found the quote. Garb gave his speech. Everyone, can I just get W, Danny, L, Garb, please? I need all of that in the chat. I don't know what he was saying. I don't know what he was saying. We need W, Danny's, and L, Garbs in the chat. Thank you. All right. So
this is gonna be the section you snip and put on TikTok, right? Yeah. The chat filled with that. Yeah, there it is.
Okay, so let me read this. Okay, what of the other? That's so weirdly written. What of the other view mentioned above? The view that explains the failure of philosophy to produce a body of information as being due to the intrinsic capacity of the human mind to find the answers to philosophical questions. The most famous example of a view of this sort was held by the 18th century German philosopher Kant. Kant held that metaphysical questions, like did the world have a beginning and time, or has it always existed, things like God, are meaningful, but the human beings are not constructed in the right way to be able to find out the answers to them. If they insist on trying to do so, they'll lose themselves in contradictions. Kant did not base his position on some special feature of human beings, some feature that might be absent from Martians or intelligent dolphins. He held that his diagnosis of the human failure to achieve established metaphysical results applied to any possible beings that represented external reality to themselves by means of their internal state. For example, I know there's a tree, a thing external to my mind, a thing existing independently of myself. Before me, this can only be because I have an internal or mental representation of a tree that is before me. If my mind were blank, if there were no configuration within my mind whose meaning for me was, here's a tree, I could not know that there was a tree before me. So they basically, to put it shortly, representate the fact that we represent the world in our minds. And I know this kind of Kant is no pragmatist about truth, right? So but the point is that we're thinking about things that are independent of experience. It's very hard to arguably, and then and it includes the belief in spirits, gods, time. People are if you were to get everyone's views about morality, God, time, causality, it's all over the place, right? But when you get like, is there a ground beneath me, right? There's suddenly universal agreement, right? So I think Kant is onto something there, and also I think Wittgenstein is onto something, which Wittgenstein would probably hate Kant, but that there a lot of this we get confused in our language. When we ask questions, we think they're intelligible, and then we chase the answers to questions that are like are bad from the start, right? So,
Yeah.
but
So,
mhm.
no, go ahead.
No, that's all I have to say. I'm sorry.
So I'm gonna make a small comment on that, and then I kind of found a way to maybe more simply put kind of the argument I have, or maybe I don't even want to call it, like maybe kind of my question I have to you. So let me first address that. I would say I actually think there's a whole lot more of agreement when it comes to certain metaphysical and or at least religious things when it comes to there's a lot more when it comes to like belief in God. Like it's actually not as diverse as some traditions in anthropology have made it out to be. If you kind of trace cultures back, and this is a difficult process, and there's a debate about how you do this, but if you kind of try to find the most like primitive culture, like the kind of original, form of culture, there's actually strong indications that it's something in the realm of monotheism, like something in this idea is like, oh, there's this high creator God, and he kind of created everything, and he's all good, like, and like various, and I'm not gonna say like they all believe the exact same thing, but like it's pretty similar. So I would push back a little bit, but that's not what we're talking about. And I will say, if you want to read a book on that, I think it's Winfried Corder has a book, In the Beginning God, or something like that, and he specifically traces this argument and or not this argument, traces this theme in anthropology of how there used to be this idea of like, oh, we started as animists and we became polytheists and we became monotheists, and then how that came to turn with the stuff that came out of like Aboriginal tribes and research that was going on by guys like Andrew Lang. But anyways, that's like a small side thing. So I guess maybe we've been talking for a while, and I think we're getting close, I think, to probably a point where I think I understand you better. I hope you understand me better.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of maybe the last area, and like we can dedicate as much time to this question as you want. Like, just kind of what I'm thinking in conclusion is how I would articulate this is, so we supposedly have these cognitive faculties that are truth favoring, like in some way, and we see that we have like, I'm going to use some like made up numbers, like I mean like something in this ballpark. We have like 90% of humanity believes in this thing. So we have these cognitive faculties. Cognitive faculties produce the beliefs of humanity. Like 90-something% of humanity believes in the supernatural. Like that's just intuitive to them. And then you have a slim portion of people who are who don't share that. What is more parsimonious? What is more simple? That the 90% of people are the ones who got the bad intuitions or the bad reasoning, or that the few percentage of atheists who reject it, that they're actually the ones who are the errors. If our cognitive faculties are truth favoring, what is more probable? What is more parsimonious? That this 2 or 3% or whatever 5%, that they're the ones who made the error, or that it's the 90% ones? Because to me, it seems like the most parsimonious response is to say if our faculties are generally reliable, truth favoring, it seems more parsimonious just to say that for some reason your cognitive faculties are the ones that fluked.
Yeah, parsimonious. Like, which one is like the more? Maybe I haven't understood the question, but and interrupt me if I'm not getting at it. But to me, there's not a fact of the matter about which one is like if your question is something like, okay, there's this is a universal belief that we've established as false, and then there's the minority view, or there's a minority though that doesn't hold to that belief. Sorry, you're gonna have to repeat the question. I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So my cognitive faculties, I think, favor truth, and let's say I think they're generally reliable. And I
Generally
look at
reliable, and then you see universal. If I'm right, then they're going to be universal. There's a universal falsity about things like God.
I would just say, like, let's say, okay, I'm sitting here, and let's say I'm looking at a species, and I'm a participant of that species. But like, okay, I think the cause of the cognitive faculties, it favored truth. Like whatever caused these cognitive faculties, it forming beliefs that are true. And then I look at this species that I'm a part of, and I see that a central belief and intuition of 90-something% of this species, and something that is thoroughly ingrained in like pretty much every part of their lives, not just their beliefs, but their lives, is this specific belief. And then I see there's just like this sliver of people who reject it, and they don't share those intuitions. If I think the beliefs if I think the cause of the cognitive faculties was favoring truth, and these are generally reliable, just objectively, what is the kind of simplest explanation here?
Okay.
That these people, these few people here, are the ones where that's the fluke in the general reliable process, or that these people are right, the few percentage they're right, and the 90-something%, the millions and billions, they're the ones who actually were the fluke in this generally reliable process.
Okay, so given that they favor, or given that there is a mechanism that favors truth,
if
we would expect that I guess what you're saying is that we would expect the universal belief to be true, right? That's what you're saying.
It just seems more. It just seems more simpler and kind of more probable to me that if what I have to go on is that my cognitive faculties are truth favoring and 95% hold A and like 5% hold B, it just seems simpler to think that, okay, B is probably the false one. B is probably the one that came about from an error because my cognitive faculties are generally reliable.
But okay, fine. If that's all we have to go off is that fact that let's just say like there is a mechanism out there. We could even say God that constructs our cognitive faculties in a way where we're more likely to come to truth than falsity. Then yeah, I would expect that beliefs that are more universal or more likely true. Just from those facts alone, I'm fine with that. But did I understand you correctly?
Yeah. Welcome to theism, my brother.
Yeah, but you're ignoring other facts.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand. You think you say, okay, yeah, that offers some prima facie justification.
Yeah,
but I think you're
it raises the probability that look,
okay.
I would bet that if you're stipulating that there is,
maybe a way to say it before, because I know you probably have some other things that you're going to say, okay, listen, this is other things I have to factor in. Would you say all else being equal, in that scenario, I should go with the one that's more...
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly.
So so then you probably think that there is some... it's not all equal. You probably think that there's something that is so inherent.
So imagine a possible world where, again, you have that mechanism that... that has that favor for truth, that build our cognitive faculties. And then there's this universal belief that there are square triangles. And then we found out why people are expressing this belief, right? Then, yeah, even though just given the fact, if we didn't really understand the content of the belief, which once you understand the content, then it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter that there's a mechanism like that. It leads to a contradiction by which we know that the universal belief is necessarily false.
Okay, so then it seems like, based on what you just said, then if you can't give a reason to reject, like if you can't give some reason to reject the 90 whatever percent of that, like if you can't, I mean, the example you just gave is you show a contradiction. Okay, if I wanted to go with that analogy, then it seems like you would need to show a type of internal consistency in this general belief.
It could be something. It could be some. It doesn't have to be contradiction. There could be.
I think that's a really strong bar. I don't want to hold it to that. Charitable for me.
Yeah, if you believe. Yeah, I could see. So what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, if you had no other information. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, then in the case of the supernatural, and I'm using this in a general sense of just supernatural, spirits, gods, whatever, not even talking about Christianity. Like, if you think then that there's something that makes it not equal here, that outweighs that, then what is the thing that defeats that?
For theism?
Just kind of generic belief in the supernatural. God, whatever.
Well, part of because this goes back to our other conversation. We need to know exactly what we mean by supernatural.
Well, tell you what, I'll say theism. I'll say some form of theism because I think belief in some type of high creator God is pretty dominant. That's extremely dominant.
Yeah, with absent all information, like if you were a kid, right, essentially, and all you find out is that most people held this belief, and then you thought that your cognitive faculties are reliable because you also knew that there was a mechanism that made that favored truth over falsity. Right? Then, yeah, I think that would be rational to believe so long as they understood the content of that view. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but so then given that then, like, based on what you said, it seems like you are on pains of being a theist unless, and I say that as a generic theist.
Look, I want to clarify something. Yeah. There are versions of theism where a person can be justified in believing. I've always thought that.
No, okay, yeah, but so okay. I'm talking about for you though, because you're part of this species. You recognize, okay, like You think you have cognitive faculties that are generally reliable. You see this
Uh-huh.
90% thing, and you've said in this situation, unless you have something that overrules it, you should think that the thing that comes from the 90% side, that's what comes from the reliability, and the other side's the error.
Uh-huh.
So in that scenario, what is the thing with theism, a generic theism, that overcomes the fact that is so strongly instilled? Like, what is the defeater for theism? Because it
Yeah.
seems like you've set up a standard where if you can't show that,
Yeah.
then you've just admitted that's the more rational position.
Yeah,
to take.
I think the low priors argument is a problem for me, right? That
Okay.
because theism, bare bones theism, is an assertion that there's some type of mind that has power over nature, that has power over any other, maybe over other superhuman or super powerful non-natural entities or something like that. And my priors about minds is that
Mhm.
it's not that it doesn't go that way. It's not that nature depends on minds or in some kind of way, or that mind has a strong influence over nature. My priors are that nature has not only a strong influence over mind, but mind heavily depends on nature. So that would seem to it completely violates my priors to think.
Okay, so let's go with that then. So you have priors, because this is great. I love this. So you have priors. You have these prior, and I guess these are probably based on intuitions or reasoning and stuff like that. Like probably a variety.
Well, I've met people, and I know about organisms, and I believe that they have minds, and I know that if I
the problem though is that argument that you just gave about minds, I'm gonna run the exact same argument on you about minds, because the overwhelming majority of humanity has not shared your view on the relationship of dependence between mind and nature. Like they haven't shared that. The
wait, no,
majority
they don't. I'm skeptical of that.
No, yeah, no, like this is something in college side. Like we naturally come to form beliefs about. Let me be specific here. The overwhelming number of cultures and things in humanity, they believe in some type of afterlife. They believe in life after death. They believe that there are spirits and minds that can do things here on Earth. They believe that after you die, they don't cease to exist. And there have been studies in college sci about like this is what we kind of naturally think about. This is how we naturally view the world in this dualistic way as we come up and before, we're given kind of various different worldviews. And so then now you're in this situation again. So when it comes to your view of the mind, I'm going to run the same argument, which is, okay, what's more likely? You have this set of cognitive faculties that's generally reliable. The overwhelming amount of people who have those cognitive faculties believe in, the ability of a mind to exist without a body, the ability of a mind to influence things in nature, and you have this slim percentage of people who feel differently, who feel your position. What's more likely? What's more simple there? Is that your cognitive faculties are presenting the error, or that everybody else is there? I'm going to run the same argument.
I don't think it's that. First of all, what my claim is that human minds and other organisms, embodied minds, depend on nature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for every mind that I come to know, okay, it heavily depends on the body, right? And
so every mind that you come to know, when you say yeah. So it depends on the body.
Yeah.
So when you say depends on the body, are you saying it cannot exist apart from the body, or that there's some correlation between the body and the mind?
The mental life is severely affected by whether there's a central nervous system, where there's a reason why animals protect certain parts of their body, like their heads, or why I protect my spinal cord more so than my arm, right? Because the mental life is actually rather delicate. Our nervous systems are really delicate.
Everybody believes that. Pretty much everyone.
So then why do they think that there's a mind that's not only is independent of it completely, but can control it?
Yeah, but so wait a second. You just said that there's correlation between what I do to the body and what I do to the mind.
No, there's dependency.
Okay, but that's different then, because showing that there's a correlation of action doesn't show a dependency. If I drug you or whatever, and then you, for some reason, like you raise your right hand, like, okay, I did some physical things. So let's say, you hit me over the head and now I can't talk right or something, or I can't think correctly. So there's a correlation with what happened with my mind and what happened with my body, but you didn't show through that. You showed that there was a causal correlation, but you didn't show that there was a dependence relation of if this doesn't exist, this can't exist.
Wait,
And so,
so you're disagreeing? Just to clarify, you're disagreeing that your mental life, at least, right, depends on the way that your central nervous system is, the
when
integrity
you
of
say
your.
it depends on, it's the
Mhm.
existence depends on.
Well, that's my assumption, right? But even if I'm wrong, and consciousness goes in a dormant state, the point is that I know that if someone hits me on the head hard, then my mental life will either disappear temporarily or permanently.
Yeah. So let me ask this. I have the belief that things that you do to my body will affect my mind. Would you agree that that belief is at least compatible with also thinking that my mind can exist without my body? Like, there's like, this isn't just a
Oh, I'm
generic.
fine with saying that the mind can exist,
Okay.
in logically speaking.
Okay, yeah, but so then if you recognize that those two things aren't a contradiction, then when we come back to this kind of the second argument that I was running, where I says, hey, listen, most people think this dualistic way about minds and bodies and life after death. I say, what's your defeater for that? You can't then appeal
Wait,
to.
can I ask you?
Yeah.
Go finish your thought? Finish your question.
Yeah. So because it seemed like before I was kind of running the second argument, because I did this thing. I was like, okay, most people believe in God. What's your defeater for that? And you're like, oh, well, I have these issues about minds. And I was like, okay, well then let's do that. Let's run the same argument again. And I'm going to say, you have these intuitions about the mind. The same reasoning. I realize that I need to phrase this better. The same reasoning that you gave me of, okay, yeah, I should go with the majority, all else equal with the God thing. That it should be going here as well. When it comes to our beliefs about the mind, you should default to the 90% or whatever of beliefs, unless you have some reason to think otherwise. And when I asked you for reason to think otherwise, you said, oh, well, like, things I do to my body affect my mind. But you already granted that that's compatible with this 90%.
It's a lot, but look, I'm making the claim that okay, like, do you think you would have existed if your fetus was aborted?
If my fetus was aborted, I have no clue. I mean, that's so. In philosophy,
Do you think you existed? Wait, do you think you existed before the fetal form, before conception, rather?
I don't think I existed before conception. Technically, there are some Christians like Oregon who have held to that. That's kind of a taboo view. But the reason I had
sleep or something.
Yeah, pre-existence of the souls. It's something that has never been officially condemned, but it's been, well, actually may have been condemned. I might have misspoken there. It's been really taboo. I think what I should have said is there's nothing in the Bible that prohibits it, but I do think it was technically condemned. Okay. But so I'm not appealing to that. I'm going to say, so the reason I hesitated is because there's this debate in philosophy of religion, philosophy of mind, among substance dualists, of when ensoulment happens. Like, when does that happen? And I have no clue.
Okay, I'm not going to expect you to answer that. The point is that if I got my wife pregnant, I would hope that they have a normal central nervous system, because the central nervous system affects so much how the mental life of my offspring will be. In fact, even affected to the point where it may not have a mental life. And so that's the concern, is that organisms that that have central nervous systems, if they have a mental life, we would hope that the central nervous is protected, because then the mental life seems to disappear. If it's not intact, or at least if it doesn't disappear, it's really detrimentally affected if it's damaged, right?
Yeah. So I think, though, to give an example, so like I'm currently wearing a jacket. Now, if you were to take my arm and you were to grab it, you could move my arm around by things you do to the jacket. But I could take this jacket off, and then if you're looking at my jacket, it's not doing anything. You could move my arm, you could move the jacket arm around, and my arm isn't doing that. So there's like, when there's this tight connection, or this, whatever you want to call this enmeshment, then yeah, we should expect to see this type of correlation. But that's how I view the soul, which is like, when you die, it's something akin to this jacket coming off. And that's consistent with all observable data that we have. And because that's consistent with beliefs about the afterlife and all this supernatural stuff, then it doesn't constitute a defeater.
I don't really know if I'm... Okay, so question.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're disagreeing. You don't think that your mind depends on your body.
I don't think my mind's existence depends on my body's existence. I think my mind can exist even if my body is like decimated. But not all Christians believe that, just for what it's worth, as you've pointed out. I want to make that clear.
Okay. And the question is whether I'm committed to the same thing. So what are my expectations? Now, it's either you're going to have an unfalsifiable hypothesis, right? Like that. Okay, because I'm fine with saying that I could continue to exist after bodily death, but that's going to be some kind of logical possibility, right? I'm making some kind of probabilistic claim because there's when we damage the brain or the central nervous system, there's a detriment to, well, that's trivial, but if you stick a pole through your brain, or if you fall on your back or near your spinal cord around your neck, there's often negative effects on the way that the mind functions, right?
Yeah, so, but to give an analogy, like suppose I'm driving my car. So I'm in my car, I'm driving that thing, and if you move my car around, you're going to be moving me around to some degree. And let's say you slash my tires. It's like, okay, that's going to negatively affect, from the outside, that's going to negatively affect how you see James's actions, how you see Garb's actions, sorry. If you, I don't know, like incinerate my motor block, that's going to affect how I do things, right? Or, so yeah, so in that scenario, you're damaging the vehicle through which I'm interacting. And so from the outside, you're going to see a loss of function. But that doesn't mean that me, the thing that is, so to speak, driving that vehicle, that doesn't mean that I've ceased to exist or I've kind of lost that inherent function. It just means the mechanism. Or
well, look, not logically speaking. I don't think I'm making any kind of analytic claim or logical entailment. I'm just saying that what would I expect if number one, the mind depended on the body? What were the expectations? My one expectations is if I traumatize the central nervous system, I will traumatize the mind, and that seems like an expectation that's met. And so,
wait, can I clarify? You would traumatize the apparent function of the mind.
Okay. Does that make a big difference?
Yeah. So here's why. So let's say you're saying, okay, if you have this dependence relation, you say, what would I expect from this, right? You're saying if I had this dependent relationship, I would expect if I damaged the brain to see this type of loss of function or appearance of a loss of function in the person, like of their mental, abilities and so on and so forth. So if I think that the brain, or excuse me, if I think that the mind, the soul, is ensouled in the body, and it is the mechanism through which the soul operates, I would expect the exact same thing that you just articulated. Like, I would also expect that. And so that data point does not favor...
My view is compatible with the existence of souls.
Okay, yeah, so then it doesn't offer a defeater, which means according to you, you should default to the 95%.
What doesn't offer as a defeat? Look, if there is a soul, if there is a, if substance dualism is true, right, that the whole question is, what's the relationship or between the soul or the mind in their dualistic sense and the body and the central nervous system? And I'm still saying that if you traumatize the central nervous system, that has negative effects on the mind or the soul. I mean, I don't really. To be fair, we said this earlier. I don't even know what souls are supposed to be, but when I say soul, I just basically mean self or mind. I hope that's acceptable to you. But yeah, it has if I rip out if I not necessarily rip it out, but if I stab with a needle, if someone was doing a lumbar puncture and then does it incorrectly, spinal tap is what they call it, then that could have terrible effects on yourself, on your mind, and so that leads me to believe about how at the mercy your mind is to your central nervous system.
While your mind is operating through your body, yes, it would. Like that's consistent with what I believe. Okay,
and so but the God is the reverse.
Go ahead.
But God is the reverse.
Yeah, so God would be a mind that is not confined to a human physical body, or at least not originally, right? So I don't see why that would be problematic. So in my experiences, I experience as minds that are embodied. But the question is, do we have justification for thinking there are unembodied minds? Now, well, actually, what's interesting is I would say there's a lot in anthropology and a lot of stuff in religious experiences where people report to experience minds apart from the bodies. I've had experiences of what seem to be minds without the presence of a body, and statistically speaking, there's a huge like. I mean, I've looked at the statistics on this in the past, but like a majority of people report having some type of religious experience with a spirit or an unembodied mind. Like that's really prominent. So if you just want to say, well, like, oh, an everyday experience, we don't experience it. So it's like, well, actually, reports of that experience is quite common, whether it be demons, angels, God, whatever. So like, if you just want to appeal to our everyday experience, like in our being humanity as a whole, well, then actually the tides don't really turn against me in any way.
Well, okay, well that's first of all, I'm not even sure what people are saying when they're saying that they have an experience with spirits or souls or.
I can tell you
I don't
what it was
even.
like.
Huh?
I can tell you what it was like for me. So yeah.
Okay. Well, no, there's a difference
just-
between what it. I'm fine with you describing the experience, but what does it mean to experience a mind? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. I was sitting on my porch, and I was praying, and I wasn't praying in a way like I wasn't like in a fervor. I was just, a lot of times when I pray, I'm just very absent-minded. It's probably not the best way to pray. I was just kind of talking like we're talking, and I prayed something, and I felt something. I had prayed for years. I had never felt anything like this. The best way I can describe it is I felt a spiritual presence appear where I was at.
But I don't know what spiritual means.
No, yeah, but that's the thing. Like I felt a presence there. I felt like there was something like some person, like some agent present there with me. Like that's what
I don't know what that means.
I know.
Really.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. If you've never experienced the color blue, I would never be able to like convey that quality to you. And in the same way, through words, I'm not.
But I know what blue. I know what blue means. So, like, do you experience your own mind?
I think so, in some way.
What does that mean?
But so here's the thing I'm saying, though, is like it seemed to me like I experienced a spiritual presence, a presence of some spirit, right? And this I'm using this in this colloquial way. I seem to experience a spirit in the absence of any other body being present there. And what I've experienced with that's actually really, really common throughout human history. Like I'm not fine.
I find that my issue is not that it's common. The issue is whether it's intelligible. To me, it's like saying I experienced the number 7. What is
okay? Well, yeah, okay. So, but what is unintelligible about me saying I experienced a presence without a body being there?
A presence? What do you mean by presence?
Okay, so let me put it this way. My view is that there are souls, like there are substances, and those souls are indwelt in bodies in some way, right?
Okay, remember earlier, are we using soul to mean identical to self?
I'm not. I would say that I'm a soul. I don't have to get in. Like that's a kind of a nuanced thing.
Because otherwise, I have no idea what souls are. Otherwise,
yeah. So let's say I think I'm a soul, right? I think I'm this immaterial thing, and I'm kind of dwelling in a body, right? Let's say and so my belief is that. Let's say I get my brains blown out. Well, like in some way, there's still this soul. Like there's still me. I'm kind of like like you see this in like cartoons or like movies. Like he's kind of hanging there and he's looking at his dead body. He's like, oh, that's really unfortunate. It's like, well, okay, if that was a thing, right? Like if there was a spirit there, right? And let's suppose my spirit then got closer to your spirit. Well, like it doesn't seem bizarre to me to think like that doesn't seem unintelligible.
Like Casper, kind of like Casper.
Yeah, if that's how you need to picture it, sure. Like
but
think of
me,
it.
I just understand those as bodies. I don't understand those as. Why would that be immaterial?
No, but so you were just saying that there's something unintelligible about the idea of me being aware of some spirit in the absence of a body being there. No, and I'm saying like. So right now, I mean, I'm trying to think of how to articulate it. So if what you are is not a body, if that's the case, if what you are is this immaterial thing, then it seems like there's nothing incoherent or weird with suggesting that the whatever it is I am could in some way experience the whatever it is you are throughout there being a body there. Like we could kind of, in a sense, just directly experience each other in some sense.
Do you think I'm directly experiencing you right now?
In this way I just described? No, I don't think so.
Do you think you directly experience your beliefs?
I think I have experience of my belief, sure.
Yeah.
In some way.
Okay, now I don't know what you mean by experience.
Okay, so
Mhm.
so let's suppose that let's suppose like I came up and I wouldn't do this because this is mean, but let's suppose I just dumped like a giant like you know how like the end of football games like people take those big ice coolers and they dump it over the coach. Like let's say I just did that to you, right? That would be something you can experience, like you know. But imagine that doesn't that you have that type of sensation, but instead of it being water that washes over you, it's like somebody just poured liquid love over you.
Okay.
And the idea of love being a liquid which should wash over you, like that sounds really bizarre. But experientially, that's what I felt. And at the same time, I went from thinking, oh, like I'm alone on this porch, to oh, like there's something here.
There's something else. Okay.
Yeah, there's something else. And that experience that I have, that is something which lots of people have also experienced. And it seems like the just kind of this is simplistic or the most simple kind of parsimonious thing there is to be like, oh, like I'm actually experiencing something. Like
Okay. Yeah. No. Look. I'm fine with weird experiences. In fact, there would be experiences that are so weird that I would believe in something like a Zeus or an Odin or Horus. Like, I mean, that definitely could happen, right? But I guess I get lost at. I mean, if we're rewinding, I'm trying to see what we were talking about. It's this okay, the mind being dependent on the body. You reject that claim to be
so
right?
I want to make clear, you were saying all minds are dependent on somebody, right?
Every mind that I have come across, and that other people that that every mind that you and I agree exists depends on the body.
I don't think that every mind that exists depends on a body. I think there are some minds that are unembodied.
But every body that you and I agree that exists depends on a body.
When you say everybody, are you referring to humans?
Maybe what I'm saying is trivial. I'm just saying, look, for the bodies that you and I, for the people or the minds or that you and I say, yes, we agree, handshake exists. It depends on a body.
Okay, yeah, in the sense that there's a correlation there. Yeah, I agree.
Well, I would want to say there's a difference between correlation and dependence.
Okay, so tell you what, let's say I grant this. Okay, let's suppose that we've been hung up on this. Let's say I grant this. Say, every human, every mind I encounter, right? Or at least every human. I was like, it seems like I encounter these humans, their minds dependent on their bodies. Mm-hmm. Are you suggesting from that I can therefore infer that it is impossible for any mind to exist which is unembodied?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay,
it's a probabilistic claim.
Okay, so that seems to be a probabilistic jump from all minds. You're saying I'm on this small little speck of dust in this giant universe. All minds that I've experienced while being, you're probably 20-something years old, mm-hmm. Maybe like in 30s, I don't know. All the things that I've experienced here, this has been with minds that are also kind of looking like me, mm-hmm. or embodied in some way. Therefore, probably all minds are like this.
It's an inductive inference, yeah.
Yeah, so that seems to me to be like all water that I have ever seen has been on Earth. Therefore, probably there is no water that's not on Earth.
Wait. So if I say that for all water that I've observed, it's clear at room temperature. It's clear. It freezes at 0 degrees on Earth, right? Well, maybe.
I like my example.
Okay, well, let's use your
example. So all water that you've encountered has been here on Earth. Therefore, probably there does not exist any water that exists.
Yeah, but all the water that I've encountered here has been on Earth, right? So if I think that there's going to be water on the other side of the galaxy, I'm going to be inclined to think that it's H2O or that I can drink it.
Okay, so your inductive reasoning there of like, okay, everything that I've experienced is this way. Therefore, probably all other things are this way. If you think that induction doesn't work with water, then I'm going to say the same things regarding.
It does work with water. It does work with water. I would say it does work with water. Okay, so you don't think
there's water anywhere besides Earth?
No. I thought the inference was.
So let me put it this way. You have never experienced any water mm-hmm. that did not have the property of being on Earth, right?
Okay.
Okay. So I've never, so according to you, this thing that I granted, for the sake of argument, I've never experienced a mind that did not have the property of being embodied. Okay, so these are the two things, right?
Okay.
You're telling me that I can't make on my inference, I can't make it's improbable.
Say
that
your
there exists
inference.
a mind.
Say your.
Yeah. So I'm running this parity. So your thing is like, okay, minds that have the property of being embodied, and I'm saying water that has the property of being on Earth. And I'm saying that whatever inference you're using for the connection of minds having the property of embodied, that's also gonna work with the idea of water having the property.
Water example is the thing is that it would make sense if I didn't have all this background information about other planets having water. So if I didn't know anything about planets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, look, if someone just tells me, look, if you found some water, would you think it's going to be on this rock rather than some star up there or some?
So what water on other planets have you directly experienced?
Well, directly. Well, from what I've seen pictures,
I'll be broad.
Mars has water.
Okay, so then I'll just say all water that you've experienced is in the solar system. Boom.
And I think that the Europa's, I mean, like, I think our whole solar system has like a lot of water in it.
Have you experienced it?
Well, by experienced, I mean, I know it a posteriori.
Okay, we'll tell you what. I'll say entire solar system. Boom, chock full of water. You directly experience it. Okay, great. I'm gonna run the same thing instead of saying Earth. I'm gonna say the solar system. Now we're back where we started.
Yeah, but if there are other solar systems, if my solar system is full of water, it's plausible that other solar systems have water.
Okay, but wait a second though, because I think you're missing an argument because so now it's the case that all water that I've experienced is in my solar system. All water I have experienced has the property of being in my solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying the parity I'm running is that if I'm going to take the argument you're running with mind and body, then you should make a probabilistic claim, which is that all water probably is contained within your solar system. So there is no water outside of your solar system. Because that is what the argument you're making with me with minds. You're saying, hey, all minds you've experienced, they're located within a body. Therefore, probably all minds are in bodies. There are no.
Okay, so you're saying that there's some kind of problem in saying this. That look, for every mind, it has a body. So it's unlikely that the next mind I come to know doesn't have a body, or it's unlikely that they're disembodied minds. There's a problem with that reasoning for you, because that's just a very straightforward inductive argument.
Yeah. But I'm saying that the exact way that you're running it to me, I can parody that exact argument and make you conclude that.
Give me the parity again. So I said for every A, there's a B. So so the next A I see, they will have a B, or it's unlikely there will be an A without a B. So
okay, I've never experienced water that is outside of our solar system. That's never happened. All water. I've experienced a lot of water in my life. I ain't never experienced one that's outside my solar system.
But I don't have. Do you think the qualifier changes? Like you put the location. I mean, it's true that for every mind that I've come to know, it's on Earth. I mean, but you think it's significant?
Let's say it's associated with my solar system. Like associated with, like I can make this run. I can make this run a lot of different ways.
Yeah, but what does it matter about the location?
Because you're trying to make an inductive argument that if all of X that I've ever experienced also have Y, then I should infer that probably there is no X that's not associated with Y. And what I'm trying to make you see is that is a really probable, that's a really problematic inference, because that's going to make you infer a whole bunch of things that I don't think you want to infer.
Okay, and the example is this water example?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying, I have to think about it, but like you're saying that somehow this commits me to believing that there's no water outside of the solar system.
Yeah, which I don't think I don't think you should believe that. Also, like, I don't think you should believe.
Wait, I'm curious. Why shouldn't I believe that?
Because it seems like completely conceivable that there would be water somewhere.
I'm not saying it's inconceivable that there are no disembodied minds. Why? I agree with you. It's kind of weird, a weird inference to say that there's no water outside of our solar system. But why? Okay,
so let me ask you this: what would be good reasoning?
Because wait, 1 second, Garb. I'm not. Yeah. I think it's important I'll let you go on, but it's important to answer that question, because then that will determine whether it's analogous or not. Go ahead.
Yeah. So What was the question you were going to ask me there? I lost my train of thought.
Okay, I'm sorry. Look,
Okay.
I agree with you that I'm wondering if they're disanalogous. Okay, and I can't pinpoint the disanalogy just yet. I have to think about it. But
we can move on. Yeah.
oh,
If
but
you
I'm
want.
curious. But I want to ask you, why is it weird for me to infer that there's no water outside of our solar system from the fact that for every amount of water that I see, it's within our solar system. Therefore, there's no water outside of our solar system. Why would
Yeah,
that be
because
weird?
I've only been here inside our solar system. And so, of course, the only water I've experienced in our solar system, like I can only experience I can only experience water like if I'm near it or if somebody's taking a picture of it or something like that. And so, yeah, of course, I've only experienced water here, and I'm going to say the same things with mine. Like, yeah, and again, like let's suppose I just granted that premise about all minds are connected to a body. It's like, well, yeah, but that's because I'm currently embodied. I'm currently in a physical. I'm currently in this physical thing. I'm not, so to speak, in that spiritual realm right now. Like you blowing my brains out. That's me going and being in that spiritual realm. That is, to me, in some sense, analogous to you leaving the solar system and going somewhere you've never been before.
So,
And so,
question. Oh, go ahead.
so I was gonna say then, I had a thought of like, okay, let's say, what would constitute good reasoning? So you say, okay, I've never experienced a mind that, let's say you never personally have had an experience, and you walked away from that experience thinking, oh, I experienced a mind apart from the body, right? Like, so you think, okay, every time I experience A, I experience B. What would constitute evidence for you to give up that connection? Like, at what point do you think? And this doesn't have to be super precise, because like, what type of evidence would need to be offered for you to be like, okay, maybe I was justified in making that inference originally, but now the data has stacked up and
How
such.
about the mind to body dependency relation?
Yeah. What would, yeah.
I would cease to believe that if I like stab people in their spinal cords, that they could just continue interacting normally. Or if suddenly past dead people rose from their graves in their zombified bodies and interacted with us normally, then it seems like there's something that it seems like it's not the nervous system or the brain doesn't really matter to that.
So I want to make sure I understand.
Uh-huh.
But now the question I was asking is, what does it take to get you to believe, just in general, that there can be minds that unembodied, not necessarily regarding humans?
Oh, unembodied minds? Evidence for
Yeah.
disembodied minds. I don't think there can be evidence for such a thing.
Okay, so you think even if millions of people say, hey, like I directly had an experience of,
I
like,
don't
let's
know
say
what they're saying when they're saying that. Like,
no, but let's say there's a room, like let's say president's giving the State of the Union, and boom, someone who looks like Jesus shows up right in front of him, shining light, says what's up, makes sense of this, and then he just is gone, right? And so like we have like millions of people who see it live on TV. We have reporters who were there who experienced it, things like that. At that point, how would you parse that in your worldview? Would that be evidence of there being some type of unembodied mind?
no, why would it?
What if that person popped in and he's like, hey, it's me, God, an unembodied mind, just wanted to say, hey, keep trucking, and then he popped out.
He says that with a mouth?
Yeah, let's say he says that. Let's say he articulates that in such a way. Or tell you what, let's say you just hear there's like this bright shining light, and then everyone has this weird sensation, and they say the same thing that I said, like, oh, it sure seems like there's something else here present. And they hear this voice in some way, and they say, oh yeah, I'm God, I'm here, I'm real. Unembodied minds for the win. You would still think that there's no evidence for.
Well, look, the way that I determine whether there's certain data that counts as evidence for a hypothesis is the predictions that the hypothesis makes. So the hypothesis that disembodied minds make no predictions.
No, but actually, I disagree. So if we think, so take the Christian view, which is that minds are something for humans that dwell in bodies, but then they don't They don't after death, and that there are lots of other minds that also are not inherently embodied. At least not in something like a physical body, right? Maybe they have some type of weird spiritual body or something like that. Actually, let me ask you that: are you okay with saying that there's a mind that's in a spirit, some different type of body than what I have right now?
Is that possible?
Like maybe some type of spiritual body, right? It's just not. It's not how I am. It's not a type of body we've ever experienced here on Earth. But it's in some way.
There could be it's logically possible for a mind to change bodies.
Okay, but let's say I'm saying there's let's say hypothetically I postulated that all minds were in some way embodied, right? Like let's say all angels, God, they're all have embodied.
Okay.
At that point, then your argument seems gone because now I'm not postulating unembodied minds.
Yeah,
right?
Right. Because an embodied mind generates predictions because bodies generate predictions.
Okay, so then great. So then we can skip past this unembodied mind stuff. I'm just like, great, they all have minds. I assume they all have bodies in some way.
Okay.
Okay, great. Now what? Now what's your objection to?
Now what's your objection?
Yeah. Now what is, because remember you said all things being equal, I should go with the majority. And you said, oh well, there's this stuff about unembodied minds, and that's really problematic. I'm like, oh great, but no, that's compatible with this. What to say they're all embodied, and now that's no longer a defeater for the 90%. So now we should go with the 90%.
Yeah, but this to me seems like some kind of at best evidence for aliens or something like that, or a very power. I mean, because first of all, bodies are.
Why would aliens be the go-to when the direct experience and intuition of the people that we're talking about is that it's specifically something supernatural? Like, how is aliens not ad hoc there? Or when I say supernatural, something like God, demons, angels, spirits, whatever. Like, it seems to me like aliens is ad hoc. Like, the most parsimonious, simple things is that, oh no, like they're actually... just to take them at what their intuitions are, which is that it's a god or a spirit or something like that. It seems like summoning aliens seems really ad hoc.
Can I ask you a question? Would you say Thanos is a god or an alien?
Thanos?
Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh, I would say he's in the Marvel universe. I would say he's an alien. Yeah.
But that's basically what he is with the Infinity Gauntlet. He's basically, why not call him God?
I mean, the powers that he has in that sense. I mean, it just gets back to what we started this live stream.
Right, the conception of God. So remember, I think Oppie's definition of gods or God is that there is this control over nature, whereas it's not nature so much limiting the mind.
Yeah. So tell you what, let's suppose I grant this. Okay. So then, are you at this point where you're going to accept that? Okay, like all these beliefs that humanity has had about God, spirits, whatever, we should follow those. And now the only thing that we need to figure out is whether those entities are to be classified as gods, as alien. Is that where we're at now in this life?
Look, yeah, but you see, if we rephrase, I don't know if you wanted me to characterize you like this, but if there are reports of people like diffuse, like, because remember, you're saying a huge number of people are having experiences with spirits and other stuff, but all of that translated to these people have experiences with aliens, then I think, then there very well might be aliens.
I don't think that answered my question. So remember,
what was your question?
Yeah. So my question was, okay, so we have these cognitive faculties, the overwhelming majority of these cognitive faculties, which is supposedly reliable, they're producing these beliefs in these entities, right? Spirits, gods, a lot of times it's really high.
Which basically come down to aliens.
I mean, okay, but then it seems that at this point in the dialogue, then the point that we're at is the best explanation for this data, because we don't have any defeater for this, and then we have that this is this should be taken as prima facie unless having a defeater. It seems like, if I'm following you, we're now at the position where we're acknowledging that there are these entities, and we're just trying to figure out whether or not they're gods or aliens. Is that where we're at?
Well, look, maybe the point is that I'm not very familiar with these studies, right? And I'm not even quite sure what people mean when they say that they experience spirits, souls, gods, or whatever, right? And so we have to do work when we ask the person, these people, because look, I mean, I've been in churches, I've been like where someone says, I feel the spirit, and some people are like, oh, I do too, and then suddenly it spreads like a virus. Everyone is feeling the spirit because these communities, it's like those sorts of reports are literally like not literally, but contagious.
So then let's just throw that away. Let's not even talk about experiences of spirits. Let's just talk about direct things that they've perceived and the beliefs that they have and how those beliefs.
But what are these reports? Look? Okay, so I don't know. What do you want me? Can I grant something to you? What can I grant to you? Because I'm gonna give you a hard time over these reports. But what can I grant to you to make me understand this inference?
Yeah, so remember that my thing is like, okay, you're telling me that we have these cognitive faculties that are reliable, truth favoring, all that, yada yada. And I'm like, okay, well, those cognitive faculties are, result in on a wide scale of belief in the supernatural, belief in gods, like creator gods, various spirits, things like that. So they result in that belief, and they also result in lots of people. And with that belief, there's kind of this natural intuition.
Wait, can I say something? I meant to say this a long time ago, and I wish I brought it up. I'm so sorry. Remember I brought the Kant thing up, right?
Yeah.
I don't think our minds are reliable for certain subjects. Remember that, right?
Okay, so what are the subjects that they're not reliable about?
Like metaphysical questions. Like I don't like causes and time and all that stuff. Like whatever. I really think that for whatever reason, our thinking processes have really failed us on that kind of stuff.
So then why are you on TikTok live arguing against God all the time if you think your cognitive faculties cannot reliably give you metaphysical knowledge about this?
I'm saying generally speaking, right? Because I mean, look, the point is that humans as a species suck at metaphysical questions, right? And I think what explains that is I think that these questions are basically the Kantian thing that you have
undercuts your atheism then, because your atheism is a metaphysical belief, and apparently we suck at metaphysical beliefs, and the process that comes about that forms metaphysical beliefs, those all suck. So that is an active defeater for your atheism.
Well, I have to think about that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are categories of topics that generally we don't have good answers to, right? But are you saying that commits me to thinking that therefore the cognitive faculties, there's something wrong with the cognitive faculties then? Because it doesn't have to be the cognitive faculties. It can be some other social explanation.
It just seems to me like you just said that our cognitive faculties aren't reliable in certain areas. I was like, okay, what areas? And you said metaphysics. I was like, okay, so our cognitive faculties aren't reliable about metaphysics. All your beliefs about atheism, all your arguments against God, that's all metaphysical. So that's all coming from according to you, non-reliable cognitive faculties, which means you shouldn't hold those. Like that you have a defeater then for all your metaphysical
Okay, I see what you're saying. I have to rephrase what I said. Okay, I'm saying humans suck at metaphysical questions. There's an explanation for that, okay? Now, maybe I was too quick to say that it's something wrong with the basis of how we reason, like the actual faculties that allow us to reason in the first place. Yeah, that was a mistake for me to say there's something wrong with that. But I think that it could be, it could still be explained. That category of mistakes can be explained sociologically, or the point is, I think the gist of what I was saying was that there are categories of topics that humans generally suck at, and I think that I could, so if we're talking about a kind of universal belief about spirits, souls, and stuff like that, I'm already calling that into question automatically in my head. Then if there is a universal agreement on whether there's a ground beneath us, or or whether there's trees get energy from light. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so then the same thing that the same reasoning that you're using to call into question all of, the stuff about the supernatural, to be consistent, that also undercuts everything you hold metaphysically about naturalism, all that. It cuts both ways. And so if you want to use that argument against the supernatural, and I'm using that, loosely, if you want to use it against all that stuff, I'm like, okay, great, well then be consistent and give up your atheism. And stop getting on TikTok live and arguing.
But what I'm saying is that you're putting plausibility on the universality of the belief in God, right?
Because supposedly we have generally reliable cognitive faculties.
Okay, but but there could be some other explanation for why people, when it comes to pertains to questions about metaphysics, like causes, souls, spirits, all that stuff, there can be some sociological explanation for why if there emerges a universal belief in that domain, the fact that it's universal isn't going to be an immediate evidence to the truth of that common belief.
So let me make sure I understand that. So we have generally reliable cognitive faculties, except for when we're reasoning about things that are metaphysical. Is that more accurate?
Well, no, but there can be other things that are not. I mean, like for instance,
but let's say there are other things. I'm not. That's not an exclusive claim. Like maybe I'll rephrase that to our cognitive faculties are generally reliable, except when we're reasoning about metaphysical things. Plus in and let in.
Well, look. Can I give you a theistic example, maybe to get at what I'm trying to say? So, do you think the devil deceives people?
In some sense, sure.
Okay, and it's not that. And so, if you find out that there are bona fide Satanists, a group of people that are bona fide Satanists, right? It's not. Are their cognitive faculties still reliable?
Yeah. So I would say the cognitive faculties were still designed in a way for them to be generally reliable, and I would say their cognitive faculties are generally reliable. Like most of their beliefs are true. I would say that they've used their cognitive faculties or not used their cognitive faculties to get to a certain belief.
Right. And so, but the point is that their deception, even if there's universal beliefs among Satanists, I don't know, whatever, right? You're not gonna take it as any kind of reason to revise your beliefs because you already know that there's some explanation for why they might be deceived, namely Satan's in the midst.
Yeah, but I mentioned earlier when we were talking that both of us, whatever our views are and however we deal with this epistemic problem, there are people that disagree with me, there are people that disagree with you. And so the mere fact that there are people who disagree with us, that's not in itself the issue here, right? Like that's not in and out.
The point is that we're taking a group and we can say that the reliability of their cognitive faculties are intact, but there's some exterior explanation for why we should distrust them.
Yeah, but I think there's an error. So I think there's an error that the Satanists have made. Now, I can reason about what that error is, or even I could step back and I would be like, okay, listen, if I'm looking at, even if I look back and I close my eyes and I can't do any type of philosophical reasoning or historical study, if I'm looking at this from a sociological perspective and I'm saying, okay, human cognitive faculties are generally reliable, somebody here made an error and some people are correct, it seems like if my cognitive faculties are generally reliable, I should describe the error to the Satanists because there's such a slim little percentage. If my cognitive faculties are generally reliable, it seems like that means they are more truth producing than not. And so this slim little percent of people, I should label them the error. And that's just if I don't.
But the Satanist point is just to say this, that when I look at Nietzsche and Marx, they offer explanations for why the specific religious commitments are so prevalent. And they're actually quite plausible to me, although I haven't given it that much thought, right? Like, I think that this world really makes you want more. I think that when we see things that are totally undesirable to us, we want to think that things will be made right. When we have, kind of universal beliefs about authorities, then that allows for all sorts of universal false beliefs to emerge. And so, like, there's all these explanations that will. I just said metaphysics, but
none of that. But Danny, none of that gets to the issue we're talking about. Like that's like someone saying, "Oh, well, like maybe supernatural beliefs were selected for because they help survivors." Like, okay, great. Like that's not the issue. Is whether or not your cognitive faculties, like the issue that you brought up, was whether or not your cognitive faculties are reliable when it comes to reasoning about metaphysical things.
And I clarified that though, right? Like in the Satanist case. Did you want to finish your thought?
No, because I mean, it seems like you're saying, okay, listen, I can come up with explanations for why this, false belief, magnifies.
Why is God belief so prevalent? You want to say because our faculties are reliable. I want to say.
Okay. So listen. So you're going to say, okay, so I have this alternative explanation of like X, Y, Z. Maybe this is why God belief became so ingrained, so prominent, and stuff like that. I'm going to say if your explanation is true, like if that's the case. It sure doesn't seem like our cognitive faculties are that reliable. And so now you're giving up.
But you said the Satanists, their cognitive faculties were reliable.
Well, I would say that they're in some sense, but not when it comes to like reasoning about
That's now
metaphysical.
there you go. That's basically my
Okay,
view about God belief. What
okay, but
your
now the
view,
distinction
basically,
here,
your views
because
about
you're
Satanism
ascribing.
is my views about theism, essentially.
Okay, but in that instance, then I can, if I'm looking at this, and then again, this is kind of the argument that I ran into from the beginning, is if I'm looking at these two things, and I'm like, okay, I have this set of metaphysical beliefs, and they're saying X, and they have this set of metaphysical beliefs. Which one of these is more likely to be resulting from error if my cognitive faculties are generally reliable? Like, if my cognitive faculties are generally reliable, and the only thing I have to look at are statistics, then I can say, well, it's probably the Satanists that are the ones who are making the error here.
Yeah, okay, but I'm fine. Look,
But
I
then I
think
can do
I
that same thing to you with atheism. I can say just as the Satanists are the ones who are in the minority when it comes to their reasoning, same thing with you. So the Satanist thing doesn't help you at all.
I feel like about 45 minutes ago, I was fine to say that if we just look at those facts, then I could see why, you would favor theism, okay? But if you're taking into account studies and your background information about how humans are, how they don't really, like religious communities don't like to self-correct about miracle claims. They don't like to, that kind of, like all this
The
list.
Catholic Church does. What are you talking about? The Catholic Church has a whole team of people dedicated. Like, there's a huge process that you have to go through with the Catholic Church for a miracle claim to be deemed reliable. They literally have had atheists. There was an atheist medical expert who was consulted by the Vatican when they were trying to verify a miracle claim as it related to one of the saints. And she then later went on to write a book about her investigation into Catholic miracle claims. And
What is it
if I'm not
supposed to
mistaken,
show?
at some point in it, huh?
What is this supposed to show?
Because
Yeah,
you're
okay, fine.
supposed.
The Catholic Church is responsible in some cases of miracle claims. The point is that when you go to a church, okay, and you say, "I saw Jesus last night," right? In my dreaming, he told me the tendency is not to object. The tendency is
Okay.
to hear them out, and then if there is going to be some kind of if they're going to address it, it's very privately and quietly. That's all I'm trying to say is that when you're part of a religious community, and maybe I can even grant to you that this doesn't happen in Christianity. Okay, when there's a religious community and you have a member that comes forward and makes claims about an experience relevant to the religious commitments in that circle, it's not very likely to be scrutinized.
I disagree with that. So first off, that's not true. I mean, at least with Christianity, it's certainly not true because Paul explicitly tells us to scrutinize those claims in his letters.
But
He
that doesn't
says,
mean that people are following him. You're telling me in a church, okay? Like, I mean, I've seen this, and that's anecdotal, but and I think this was Hume's point, by the way, that I'm stealing this from, is that if someone wants to share their testimony about what happened to them and why they believe, like I got healed, right?
Mhm.
Is the tendency of that religious community to question, did you really get healed? Right? That is not the tendency.
What are? Yeah, there are a lot of Christians who specifically invest. So listen, if you're going to say which are most, which aren't, like that's going to vary from church to at least some degree. But there are a lot of like I'm a Christian who, when I hear people like make claims like that, I kind of go down the skeptical line of thought.
You're a
Like, okay,
minority. You're a minority.
from my experience, I don't think I am. But so here's the thing I'm wondering, right, at this point. So, according to you, if we suck at doing metaphysical reasoning, how do we, when we're assessing metaphysical claims, then, if our cognitive faculties are just kind of in a sense generally unreliable about metaphysical reasoning, then how do we go about parsing metaphysical things? Because apparently it
Actually,
seems.
look, do you understand how unsettled I am about metaphysics? I'm almost an agnostic to everything. Like, I don't have a theory of time. I don't have a theory of causation. There are very few things that I'm certain about metaphysics. I sweat in the shower, right? About, okay, am I holding to the correct view about this? It is so difficult for me to do metaphysics, right? And I question myself all the time. I'm not questioning, though, what color is the bathtub? Right? I'm not questioning whether I'm standing on the ground, right? My metaphysical views are ebb and flow, right? It's very difficult. And yes, it actually, sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't think I can trust myself on this one. I got to go to someone that's smarter, right? But I know.
Do you think we can have any metaphysical knowledge then?
Yes, it can happen. I'm telling you that I struggle with it. I don't.
How do we get that then? How do we get metaphysical knowledge according to you?
Well, you see, this is ironic because I might be giving a metaphysical picture and trying to give. You see, it's all a set of cobwebs right now. Now, all I know as far as arriving at philosophical truths is that which conforms to the predictions of the beliefs of about my experience, right? Which is kind of like my theory of truth that we were talking about earlier. If that is water, that means that I have a theory about what it means for that to be true. Is that if I stick my head in there?
Wait, I'm sorry. I want to make sure I understood that. So when it comes to metaphysical truths, you said something about your theory about
Of truth, my theory of truth.
Okay, but that's a metaphysical position that you have to get to. How do we get there? Because apparently we suck at metaphysical reasoning.
Yeah, basically, if the alternative is I don't even know what it means, and I only know what it means to hold to the view that I'm currently holding, right? Then I have no option, right? Like, so
wait, you don't even know what it means. Like, you don't even know what it means.
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. Take moral values. Okay, I think moral values are reflective of our preferences, our desires, our internal states. Now, why do I hold to that view? Mainly because I don't know what it means to say that there are moral values independent of that. I just don't know what it means. I have no clue.
Yeah, okay, so I want to make so you don't even so I hold to something like a correspondence theory of truth, and it sounds like you don't, like something in that ballpark.
Right.
You don't even understand what I mean when I say that.
Okay. Don't. I mean, I know what the definition of correspondence theory of truth, but it's going to try to define what correspondence is exactly. What is that?
Okay, so I want to ask a few more questions. So when someone says they believe in God, you don't even understand the content of that statement. Like you don't even understand what they're saying.
I don't understand omnipotence. I don't understand omnibenevolence. I don't understand any of that.
Because listen, like those are like, I'm just asking, when someone says, "Hey, I believe in a God. I think He created everything." You don't even understand. Like you're just sitting there, like, you might as well say.
I have to. Do you know how much I have to assume when someone tells me I believe in God? I have to assume so much. When I'm talking to you, because I know you a little bit about you. I can carry a set of philosophical assumptions. But a random person in the street, when they say believe in God, that I think thinly they might think that something created the universe, but really I don't. What did the disciples think about God? Did they think God was omnipotent, omniscient, all that stuff? I have no clue, really. Okay,
I'm just feel like you. I just want to make clear I'm understanding rightly. You sincerely, you don't even. Your objection at this point is you just sincerely don't even. And when I say that in that way, I don't mean that in like a pejorative way. Like you're just straight up saying, I literally don't even understand the semantic content of sentences that are along the lines of God exists.
In many cases, I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, but like just in general, okay, if you don't understand the semantic content of what theism is, I don't understand why. Let's bump the brakes.
Really sorry. Do you want to? If you insist, then I'll let you go. But I mean, I don't know what it means to say that there's a square triangle. Okay, but if someone's
sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Okay, so would you recognize that most people understand? Most people don't have trouble when someone says, "I believe in God." Even most atheists. Like if I ask most atheists, "Do you know what I mean when I say I believe in God?" Even they're going to be like, "Yep, for sure." Like I know what you're saying. I don't.
Yeah, sometimes I don't even know what atheists are denying.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so at this point, if not only the overwhelming amount of people who believe in God know what it means to say the statement, "I believe in God," but even most atheists would say they know what it means to say, "I believe in God." At this point, if you don't understand that statement, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, it seems most probable to me that there's just some cognitive malfunction going on your end. Like that seems like the simplest thing. Because at this point, it isn't even Christians versus atheists. Like even atheists and Christians both agree that this thing is that this thing is understandable, and you're just like, it's not understandable. Like that just seems like a cognitive malfunction.
Let's look. There might be intelligible beliefs, but here's the really annoying thing about philosophy. There's how people talk out there in normal land, right? And then there's people how they talk when they're speaking philosophababble or when they're talking about religious language, right? If someone says like, "Oh man, only God knows," right? What he's doing. I understand them. I understand what they mean by God in that context. Okay? Or if they say, so the context really matters, and if I piece together something, I might get something like the creator of the universe, or a creator that has power over, or can violate the laws of theories of science that we've come up with, or something like that, right? Okay. But when I get in philosophy, metaphysics land, I have never ever gotten a good account of omnipotence, omniscience, an agent being infallible. I'm at a loss, right?
Yeah. So am I correct in understanding you that you can believe in this kind of general sense when someone says they believe in God? You believe you can understand that in kind of like a wide 10,000-foot view. But it's when you get down into the nitty-gritty of the very specific philosophical details that you don't understand.
Then, really, really, I understand my mother.
Okay, but do you understand every specific nitty-gritty philosophical issue of all of your current positions?
No, there's some positions that
because you told me earlier you don't know what's going on with philosophy of mind. You have some intuitions here or there. So it seems like how you just described not being able to know the nuances of theism, it seems like earlier in this conversation you were saying the exact same thing about your atheism or your views of mind and evolution, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not. Look, I'm not totally. This is what I kind of said. I'm not totally confident about my fill of mind, right? I think I have to really think about what I mean when I say non-natural. Okay, and then there have been sensical proposals, and I told you this, right? There, I can name you 3 or 4 proposals of what natural means and what non-natural means. And each side of those presentations, I'm on the side of non-natural. But so the point is, and I even told you, I don't know what I'm going to believe in 5 and 10 years. It might be that I shouldn't be very confident about my views about mind, actually. Okay, and so when I'm doing metaphysics, what I mostly rely on when I do end up being really firm in a position is when the opposite position is unintelligible.
Okay, but when you say unintelligible at a very specific, but when you say unintelligible, you're saying if the opposite position is one which, if I zoom in very deep, I can't answer every specific philosophical
question. No, I don't know.
Question.
I don't know what it means, right? Like, can we please use the example of moral values, right? That's a very good example. I am super confident of moral anti-realism. Okay, that's one of the most confident views. What?
That's what we're talking. Why don't we use God then, since that's what we've been talking about?
Okay, fine. I'm pretty confident about the non-existence of God. Now,
okay, but you said that on a 10,000-foot view, that's intelligible to you. You understand what people mean by that. So it's not theism that's unintelligible to you. It's specific auxiliary claims about theism being omnipotent.
Well, first of all, not everyone agrees on what theism is. That's the first problem. Okay, Ryan Mullins and Graham Oppie disagree on what theism is, for instance, right? I interviewed Ryan Mullins last night. He would say that with respect to the theism that's studied in philosophy, the Greeks were not theists, nor were the Egyptians, right? Okay, so philosophers disagree on what theism is in the first place.
Okay, yeah, but there is some disagreement. I was like, okay, what constitutes the nitty-gritty definition of a god or something like that? Like we talked about that before. Like, okay, if you get my buddy Christian James up here in a talk, me and him, like we have different models of God, but we both agree that there's a God that exists that does things. And so like saying, oh, listen, like there's disagreement about, there's disagreements about auxiliary aspects on this model of theism, saying like, okay, you guys disagree on, does he have this property, does he have this property, so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that there's not agreement and consensus on a much broader level. And so it seems.
What is that consensus then? What would you say is the broad notion of God?
The broad notion of God is something along the lines of a transcendent creator of the universe, who is the ground.
What does transcendent mean? What is transcendent?
It is not bound by this physical reality that you and I see. Something along those lines.
And then that comes to questions about what the physical is.
Okay, but listen, here's the thing. You can keep asking me those questions, right? Mm-hmm. I can do the same thing to you. I can say the exact same. Okay, what's the mind? And whatever question you give me, I can ask you to define.
Yeah, there's going to be a point to you, Gard. There's going to be a point where I can't answer your question anymore.
Yeah, and same thing for me. But then you're saying because you can't keep asking these questions and eventually get to a point where like, all right, I'm completely satisfied. You're saying this view is unintelligible. But I'm going to say, well, wait a second. If that's how you're gauging unintelligible. Okay,
when I say unintelligible, I mean I can't make sense of it myself. I don't know what it means.
Okay, but then you've already said you understand on a 10,000-foot view. If I say I believe in God, you understand what that means. Like you understand that
when you say it, or when Ryan Mullins says it, but y'all mean two different things.
No, me and Ryan Mullins view, like, I love Ryan Mullins. Like, I think he's great. Like, I would probably agree whatever
Okay,
his
he doesn't think Zeus is a god if he existed. Would you agree?
Okay, yeah, but I've already clarified that
All right.
if Zeus is, I've already clarified that when we're talking about God, we have to be specific. Are we talking about like modern philosophical notions, like ancient notions, like but theism in general, like if you ask most people, oh, like what is theism and what is atheism? Like, so there's this old joke in philosophy is like, I can't give you a definition of what porn is, but I know it when I see it, right? And so it seems like you're engaging in this fallacy of like, I have to be able to give you this super rigorous set of necessary or sufficient conditions of what
No, no,
constitutes.
no, no. Porn. I don't think porn has joint necessary and sufficient conditions, right? And
That's what like sometimes this is called a Socratic fallacy. It's like, oh, I'm just going to continue to question you about these things. It's like, okay, listen, maybe I can't give you an exact definition of what something like justness is, but I know this thing over here. I know that's
it depends on what I'm trying to do. If I'm trying to understand you, right? If let's take it that I'm being genuine, okay? If I'm trying to understand you, and then there's a point where you tell me, look, I understand what this is. I don't know how to describe it to you. Right? I'm like, okay, I said, I'm sorry, I can't believe that because I don't understand it. That's not even saying that you're wrong or that you are irrational or believe in gibberish. I mean,
okay, so let me ask you this, because we've been on this intelligibility thing for a bit. Let's suppose that someone they thought that they could understand the statement atheism and theism, like those are both mutually intelligible to them. Like it's not the case where it's like, oh man, I just don't even understand what the theist is saying.
and by the way, when we say theism, we mean really God. I think people agree that theism is at least the belief in God. I think what I meant to say in that is that it's God that it's hard to. There's like it's difficult to get a universal conception of God by which I can say that's completely intelligible to me.
Okay, yeah. So if someone didn't hold to your position, then how are they going to parse metaphysical claims? So if they're in doing metaphysical,
I don't know. I don't.
Okay. So all the atheists in here right now. So if they understand statements like God exists, like if that seems intelligible to them, they're just lost.
Well, I don't know how they're interpreting you. Right now,
Okay.
presumably they're interpreting you in the same way I am because we know stuff about you, Garb. Right? But
Yeah,
if a Hindu says I believe in God, actually, hand to God, no clue what they're saying at that point. I really don't.
I mean, it depends on for me personally, it depends on the brand of Hinduism. So it seems to me then that like if you ever came to be able to understand what the theist claims, let's say hypothetically you woke up tomorrow and you were able to understand what the theist claims. At that point, how would you go about parsing out how things work?
There are concepts of God that I find intelligible. Right?
Which one?
Ones that don't carry omnipotence. That's way more like ones that don't carry omnibenevolence in the way that, basically it can't be perfect being theology. Okay?
Okay,
and it's going to be.
So good.
So it's going to be some.
Can I give you a definition of omnipotence then? And so something like God has the maximal set of power granting abilities, or something like that. Any ability where it's a power to have it, he has the maximal set of having those types of abilities.
So is that different than saying that God has a set of all powers?
No, it's not technically. So some people might say, well, listen, maybe there are some powers that I'm not saying I hold to this position, but some people might say, listen, there are technically maybe some powers that God couldn't have all the powers, so maybe there's like a maximal set that he can have. I'm not saying I hold to that position, but let's say for the sake of argument, I'm saying, yeah, let's say God has all powers to the maximal degree.
Is a set of evil powers part of the set of all powers?
No, so that's not, because the ability to do the ability to do evil is not a power; it's a liability. It's something better not to have.
What do you mean by a liability? What do you mean by now? You have to contrast a power and a liability.
Great, a power is something it's better to have than to not to have.
What do you mean by better? What do you mean by better?
It's more beneficial to have.
What does
if
beneficial
you don't
mean?
know what beneficial means, then I don't like.
I know what I mean by the term.
Understand what these concepts mean? Okay, do you think it's more beneficial? Like if in your everyday life, would you say, do you make statements like it's better to have X than Y?
Yes, all the time.
It's more beneficial. Okay, so then you understand the concept of what I'm saying.
But because I use the same terms as you doesn't mean we mean the same thing. What I mean by better, What I mean by better is desire. In many cases, I'm using it to mean desirability, desired.
So here's what I think you do. I think you play a skeptical game, which is anytime someone makes a pretty understandable statement.
No, you did not make an understandable statement.
Let me finish, and then you can. I'll let you respond. Like, it seems like you play this game that like kids play with their parents, which is like their dad says like X, and he's like Y, and he's like oh la, and he's like Y, and like you just keep playing this game, and then you think that somehow by playing this radical skeptical game of just pushing this back or asking me to keep defining terms. Any term you say, any definition you give of any property, if I push you long enough, your definition is eventually going to be circular because there's only a finite amount of words in the English language, and you're going to have to use some of those words to define things. Or you're going to have to point to an extensive definition. Like this problem, like this game you play of I'm just going to keep pointing and asking you to keep define things until the point you can't anymore. I can play that game too, but I don't because that's obnoxious and it doesn't further truth. So if you really want to play that game, okay, like I and most people don't find that persuasive.
Okay, the problem is that I'm assuming you're using a realist sense of beneficial there. I don't understand realist senses of beneficial. When I use beneficial, I'm talking about something that depends on a stance. So it was a genuine question to ask you, Garb, what you mean by beneficial in a context where you could be using a realist sense of beneficial.
Okay, so let's say I adopted your stance then of beneficial. Let's say it's more beneficial for God to have that than to not have that. Then what happens?
Okay, but now it sounds like what determines whether you have a power is whether God approves of you having that ability, or whether God.
We're talking about him, remember?
We're kind of talking about what?
We're talking about God. So we're talking about
what is the desire index to?
Do I know?
What is the desire index to? Because you're defining liability in terms of an undesirable. The effect has some kind of undesirable end.
Yeah, let's say it's undesirable to in relation to God's goals or something like that. Let's say make it all subjective God. If you really like, I'm fine with using some like objectivist idea or objective idea of great making properties or a great making idea of power. But if you want to push me on that and you say that I think I can grant like okay, let's just subject it all to God. I don't think that's going to make much of a difference.
Okay. So when do I have? So you wouldn't say I wouldn't have the power to lie then? I don't have that power.
I would say you have the ability to lie, but I think being able to commit immoral acts, like that's not a power. That's not something that's better to have.
Did David have the power to unalive Bathsheba's husband?
Did he had the ability to? So I'm using ability here. How you're doing power is how sometimes we use ability.
Okay. So then I'm not really interested in power so much as ability, right? God doesn't have all ability. So then you would say God has.
Okay, so, yeah.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, no, okay, so tell you what, let me make it simple then. If I said that God has I said, okay, I think God's omnipotent, but I don't think omnipotence entails immoral acts or actualizing illogical things or things like that. Would you have a problem with that conception of omnipotence being coherent, it being intelligible?
Right, yeah, you could. But I mean, it's kind of weird because what you're doing is putting limits on omnipotence, right? Now,
okay,
that's what you mean. Mm-hmm.
Let's call it somewhat impotence, right? Like I hold to somewhat impotence, right? I think that God. Let's say I think God has the ability to do all those things except for those things I just mentioned. Is that idea of God intelligible?
Yeah, it's not. By itself, it might be, but there's a reductio here. The reductio is that if God only if there was a possible world where God only desired to do one thing, okay, and he did not everything else, every other kind of ability was undesirable, then he would have one.
Can we pump the brakes? Because the thing I'm just trying to get to is the idea of an intelligible God. So are you granting me that the definition of omnipotence I just gave is one which it's intelligible, you can understand what I mean by it?
No, but this falls prey to the McGear objection, and not essentially. That's an objection in the literature, right?
Okay, so you're saying it's no longer coherent. You don't understand the claim that I'm making at this point. I'm focusing on intelligibility right now.
Well, look, if you want to call some like Mr. McGear a god, and if all you mean, I mean, it's just such a. I mean, is it perfectly coherent? Sure. I mean, it's coherent.
Then we're off to the races. Then I'm off to the races.
But I don't think you believe this.
Okay, great. So, whether or not I believe it is irrelevant because you said that before, when you were assessing metaphysical beliefs, you held to your metaphysical belief because the opposite is unintelligible. According to you, you just articulated an intelligible metaphysical belief about this weird God being. Okay, how are you going to distinguish between these metaphysical beliefs? Because it can't just be now the opposite's unintelligible.
Well, look. I don't think you realize what you've accepted, right? Because I think that what you've done is you've defined God in a way where suddenly I can be God. I mean, like, I don't. Is that what you want to do?
No, that's not the definition.
Oh, sorry, omnipotence. Omnipotence. You define omnipotence in a way where I can be omnipotent.
No, I didn't define omnipotence in any way that you can be omnipotent. That doesn't follow.
No. Because look, if
how are you omnipotent under the definition that I gave?
Yeah, because you could have a being, a human, or that's always existed, someone like me, that that basically could had all these abilities, but would only do or would only have the power to, let's say, pull out my ear, right? And couldn't do any liabilities because.
So I know about the McGeary objection. I reference it in my dissertation.
Okay.
Because I personally don't adopt something in this realm. So yeah, because I'm on board with the McGeary objection. I specifically use it in my dissertation. Like,
okay. So how does this escape a McGeary problem?
Yeah, because me personally, I don't use a definition that talks about. I don't use the states of affairs omnipotence. Like I don't do something like that, right? Like I don't say, okay, God can actualize all states of. So, but now the McGeary objection is an objection that comes about if one says something like God can actualize all logically possible, or God can perform all acts that it's logically possible for him to perform. The McGeary objection does not that doesn't apply to other forms of omnipotence. So if you say something like, man, I could pull up my dissertation.
Well, can we work with your definition and see if it falls prey to it? So
yeah, Go ahead. Yeah, I would just say I don't really care to like give a precise definition of omnipotence. In fact, I'm fine to say God, real, big, powerful, and then like the exact precise elements of that.
Then I find that more intelligible.
Okay, great. So now you have an intelligible form of theism. Okay,
yeah,
we have
I never said I didn't. I never said I didn't.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now we have this form of theism, which you've said is unintelligible. You have what you hold to now, which is intelligible. How do we distinguish between these metaphysical beliefs?
Well, at that point, it seems like going to be an empirical question, right? Because like if it's no longer a question of if you have two intelligible views, then whether one is rational or not has to do with your priors of experience. Then it becomes a matter of probabilities.
Well, wait a second. You said we suck at metaphysical reasoning, and because we suck at metaphysical reasoning, you just have to go with whatever you hold. You pick a position and you hold to it if the opposite is unintelligible, because we suck at metaphysical reasoning.
But look, the point is that if the theories generate unique predictions, if you're comparing theories and one generates predictions that the other doesn't, I don't think you're doing metaphysics anymore. You're doing something more like science.
But you're coming to metaphysical conclusions, right?
Okay.
But we're still reasoning about metaphysics.
No. Look, if we've come to two coherent theories, and one theory, then when I look down and my fridge is open, then it raises the probability of that theory being confirmed. One of those theories being confirmed, not the other, and that's strictly empirical.
Okay, but this is, I mean, listen, if you want to go with this standard, like, I can go with this, but this just isn't the standard that you set up for me earlier. Because earlier, you got in a position where you said, yeah, we're just generally unreliable when it comes to reasoning about metaphysical beliefs.
That's not reasoning about metaphysics.
No, but listen, if you're saying, because we're trying to say, okay, do I hold to this metaphysical position about God, or do I hold to this metaphysical position about God? And you're saying, well, listen, I'm gonna use this other reasoning about this empirical things, right? You're saying we have to go to these empirical things. Okay, well then you're using empirical data to come to a metaphysical conclusion.
Why would that be a metaphysical conclusion if it can be empirically falsified?
Are you saying you can empirically falsify God?
And if both theories are equally coherent and one predicts, if they don't have basically, if a theory has the exact same set of predictions, then if they're competing, then then it's a metaphysical question we're asking, okay? And so how you differentiate between them has to do with coherence or whether you understand one theory or another.
Let's
Does that make sense?
So maybe it would help to say this. Is theism a metaphysical position to you?
It can be, it may not be.
Is belief in the supernatural a metaphysical position to you?
Well, it depends on what you mean by supernatural.
Just general beliefs about God, spirits.
Most people would say
right?
yes, but it really, look, again, I've already told you from the very beginning that I'm settled of the question of supernatural.
But you've already told me in this conversation, you have already referred to theism as a metaphysical position. Like you've already
perfect being. Look, when we're asking
general theism, I said this like
general
this is why
theism the general theism could be empirical and scientific rather than metaphysical. And if I misled you, I apologize. That's been my position for a long time. Is that there are I think Zeus Zeus living in Mount Olympus is not a metaphysical thesis. Okay, it's just not.
Okay, so at this point, I've enjoyed talking with you, but at this point, I don't know how we're going to benefit from a conversation, because if it's 8 o'clock and I'm having a conversation with you, you're using words in one way, but then 11 o'clock runs around, and then I'm starting like, okay, Danny's used these words in this way, he's committed himself to this position. Now I'm trying to draw on that, and now you're rejecting what you said earlier.
No, what
going forward in this conversation, I'm not like me and here we could parse something out, and we could like, okay, let me readapt and like figure out what Danny's saying. But based on where we're at right now, I'm not confident that if I come to accurately understand your position how it is right now, I'm not confident that you're going to stick to whatever standard you've given me right now. I think you're just going to switch it 2 hours down the line if we stay there.
Yeah, you came on here, and the first thing we talked about. You came on here, and the first thing we talked about is the difficulty in defining God. Okay, it's very difficult to define God. Okay, I've always thought this. I think it's always been a very big struggle for me to define God, and depending on your definition of God, that will determine whether it's a metaphysical thesis or an empirical thesis. Okay, Ryan Mullen's understanding of theism seems to me a metaphysical thesis, right? But the Greek gods' conception of God, that version of theism seems more of an empirical thesis, right? I didn't mean to mislead you, but from the whole theme of what I've been saying is that the term God it's not an easy term to interpret people if you don't know a lot about their culture or their individual. If you're Ryan Mullins, or if you're someone like you, I take you to accept a perfect being theology like Ryan Mullins. So the assumption there is that it is a metaphysical thesis. But if you push me saying, hey, Danny, is there a case where you would use the term God or use the term theism or water it down in a way where it would be an empirical thesis? The answer is yes.
Okay. So at this point, we've been talking, I don't know, like 4 hours or something. Where would you like to conclude this live at? So, we got on because
okay.
we were...
Well,
I've enjoyed this conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it. And there have been times I've gotten feisty in it, and if I came off as rude, please forgive me. I'll do the same for you. I've enjoyed this conversation. Are there any topics that you would like to discuss before I hop off? Because it's midnight where I'm
at. I really... No, not really. I mean, not with... any topic that I bring up could last hours, right? I think that, you gave me advice a long time ago that philosophy is difficult. We should give time to think about it. I don't really think, 4 hours is a long time because we're both married and presumably you're working. I have 3 jobs, but really I am so unsettled on so many metaphysical questions, and I've talked you and I have probably talked days on these topics. And I think what we've done here is we've set up a discussion where I know it might seem that I'm being disingenuous at times. I don't mean to be. The truth is that metaphysics and philosophy is very difficult. Some issues I'm very confident on it, but the majority of issues in philosophy I'm very unsettled about. This is why I'm not, there are a lot of lives out there that will change their topic. I stick to one topic because I feel confident about that topic. But I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about my position on the philosophy of mind or metaphysics because I don't want to talk about things that I'm not confident about. Okay. So I think and I think what we've done is managed to have a conversation where we're trying to figure things out, even though it felt like we were going in circles. And I greatly appreciate your politeness and your effort to understand me to the best of your ability.
Yes, I've enjoyed it. Can I make? Are you going to be posting this on your YouTube? This conversation?
I can. You can post it. I don't really mind. I
I don't have access to it.
I didn't know. Well, if you want the recording, let me know and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please send it to me because I like I've had people who are following our conversation on my end, and I'm sure there have been people who have been following conversation on your end who would probably like to see it.
Yeah,
So if
I
you don't
might
mind,
post it. I mean, I don't know. I'll definitely give you, and you can do what you want with it.
yeah.
I might put. I mean, I have to listen to it. I don't know. Like, I'm very picky about what I upload. I upload only maybe like 10% of my stuff on YouTube.
I hardly ever upload my lives. I've just had people have been wanting us to have a
But
conversation
you're
for a while.
right. You're right. It's because there's a history. Maybe it's good to post it. Um, and I bet we talked about a lot of difficult stuff. So I know that I have a lot of smart people following me. So if there's something that I said that was questionable, they could correct me on it. So yeah, I'll definitely. Do you use Google Drive?
Yeah, if you send me a link, or if you send me a link on like in my DMs, DM me a link, or whatever would be easiest for you, because I'd like to have it. Like I said, I've had so many people saying, "Hey, like we'd love to see you talk with Danny." I would just put it on my YouTube, and then if you wanna post it, whatever. It's like I know like I've been
Yeah,
talking with Danny.
I'll post it. I wasn't because part of like this was look. I don't know if for the context. Let me give everyone the context. Garb and I have been at each other's throats. I wanted you to come in. I wanted to clear the air. I wanted to talk about some of the stuff we were talking about, and it led to a huge conversation about our views of metaphysical views, stuff that I was very, the difficult to talk about. So I think it'd be interesting for people to listen to. And I didn't plan to record and like when I'm having a chill because I've had a lot of these conversations in private. Usually, this kind of conversation I end up having in private, and it's none of that is posted, right? So I have these conversations quite often, but usually in private. But yeah, I'll send you the Google Drive link, and that'll be that. But oh my god, when was the last time you downloaded a live from TikTok?
I tried doing it not too long ago and it messed
Did
up.
you how did you mess up? Because sometimes it deletes the video and just has audio. Did it do that to you?
Yeah, that's happened to me. Do you do this on your phone or on your computer?
This is my iPad.
Oh, interesting. I've had it mess up with my computer before, but when I do it on my phone, it usually is fine.
Okay. Well, I'll send you what I have, but I bet someone recorded. And so, guys, if you have a recording, please message Garb and I because I should have thought about the that glitch, that TikTok glitch. But we can pray that it's not going to be glitched. But I'll send you whatever I have.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah,
Okay.
and the reason I was asked is I was going to say, will you at least promise me? Like, I feel like we've had a gentlemanly conversation here. I was going to say, if you do post this, can I have your word that if you post it, it's not going to have a title like "I dunked on Garb" or
If it would be a joke if I did that. But no, I will not put that title, and I don't think I'm going to. I'm too lazy to go through this and clip stuff. So you have my word, no clips from this audio. You can clip me. I don't really care. And it will be a very neutral thumbnail and title.
Okay, that's just what I was going to ask. It's like I would be so disappointed if we had this. What I thought I've enjoyed this discussion. I thought it was good. I would be really disappointed if I wake up tomorrow and I saw something like uncharitable. But I appreciate you saying that.
Nothing like that. I promise.
Is your wife going to be upset with you that you stay up late, or are you people?
I have a huge advantage over every married couple. My wife sets me free. Like I mean, we spend a lot of time together because all I do is TikTok, work, and wife, and sometimes video games. Although I haven't been doing that as much, but that's all I do. Literally, that's all I do: work, TikTok, and wife. And now she started playing video games, so now we play games together. She really likes Diablo 4. I don't know if you play it.
I don't.
It's so funny when I don't really think the way she plays is she just spam like she plays it like a kid would play Mortal Kombat, right? Just like face rolls the keyboard. It's really horrible to watch, but she has a blast. So we've been watching Diablo 4, but playing. So why do you ask?
No, I just found it because like I was tonight. It was like 8:30, and I just walked into my computer just to like I don't know check something before we were gonna hang out. and I saw that you were live, and then I was like, I saw that you posted a clip to me, and I like with fear and trembling, I asked my wife, I'm like, I know we're supposed to hang out tonight. Danny's been trying to get me on a live, and she's like, go, just go. And so it's like that was at like 8:30, and now it's midnight, and so I just want you to know what I've sacrificed. One married man to another. I just want you to know what I've sacrificed.
Well, you know what my wife has been doing?
What's that?
She's been sleeping for the last 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, that's what my wife's asleep, and I have to do the crawl
Because
into bed.
we're both teachers. We wake up really early, and she's gonna quit. She hates her job. She's gonna change careers. But so we sleep, like we take a lot of naps, and she's probably still sleeping. So I'm always free. But again, all of this was I try to treat you. I tried to treat this not like a debate at all. I hope you.
I didn't treat this like a debate. Yeah.
So
and people in the chat who were like, "Who won?" Like philosophy won in my book. Like I don't walk into conversations like this trying to win something. And yeah. So, but you know who like. What I was gonna say is like whoever won here when it comes to James's marriage in a few moments, not James. James is not.
Oh, there is one paper I think you'd be interested in reading if you want to understand my view about the truth stuff and pragmatism.
Yeah.
It's not that long. It's called Realism and Relativism, right? Because
yes.
that is one of the best papers to get introduced to the pragmatic theory of truth.
Okay, yeah. Can you deem me?
Yeah, of course. All right.
All right, man. Kick me off.
Good night. I'm ending my live. My bladder's about to explode because I've been drinking so much soda. All right, so y'all have a great night. Thanks, Garb, for coming in.
Take it easy, man.
Okay,
Appreciate
bye.
you having me.